I cannot blame on the action or the uncelibacy or the sex itself. So I think I try to distinct it into three parts for me, as I view it, is that the sexual crimes which involve sex is to do more with sadistic pleasure. It's with uh, creating or gaining pleasure from the pain and not just the physical sensation or something. That's the sadist part, and but that's not lust. That's the sexual things. I don't want to say the actual word, so I'm just saying sexual things, sexual crimes. Yeah. Then the
Sure.
lust is more so about wanting or desiring care or love, but you can end up having like a hookup with someone or one night stand. I don't know, whatever. But it's lust. You desire something, but once the sex is done, you would not feel that great because the person that you stayed with, had a amazing experience with, is no longer with you because it's one night stand. It's lust. It will be incomplete. You will become hypersexual, and you will go again and again. Again, here there is sex, but the how we are using this action of or the sex is with the intention. Okay, so now here it becomes lust, which is not so destroying, but it's sort of like hoping for not finding an actual compassionate love. And then there's love or compassionate uncelibacy or sex, which two people can have, or I don't know, which people understand each other a lot, and they struggle and they suffer to give each other a great experience, and that is very fulfilling, and that stays for a long time, and that is even healing. I think the act of uncelibacy is really powerful to get to a person's soul, or it is a kind of a tool that can affect someone a lot, but how you use it, it also matters. So with the sexual crime, that person will use it for sadistic purpose. It's not lust again. And for people who are struggling with lust, it's for sort of like coping. They do not desire the lusty sex. It's more about wanting love. They're not whores or something. They want love in the end. And I see actual sexual things, which is I think it's good and compassionate where people struggle and suffer and do the sex and like under love or compassion. So that's how I see. And I do not blame the action itself, but the other things attached to it too.
Thank you.
Sex is complicated. It's very complicated. What people actually like, there's a fine line between pleasure and pain. And ultimately, when it comes to what people actually want out of their sex life, for one, it's going to take a long time to figure that out, especially as a young person. But two, whatever kind of sex that a person wants, however, ordinary or strange, consent is what matters. And consistent consent, constant levels of communication. A lot of sex partners don't actually communicate their feelings. And that is worsened by the fact that a lot of people don't know how they actually feel to begin with, especially young people getting out into the dating scene and having sex for the first time. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's very difficult and scary and isolating for a lot of people.
Yeah. It is.
Well, there's another way. There's another way to look at this as well, and that is the way of the animalistic tendencies and aspects of sex. That putting sex on a pedestal is just foolish. And nobody cares. You want to jerk off in your own mouth or whatever, not to be vulgar, but whatever you want to do sexually. Yeah, it's like a pig, it's like a dog, it's like a cat, it's like a bear, it's like a goat. You want to feel pleasure. It's not creating all these books and all these programs and all these education systems about how to get your rocks off, and then figuring out, well, how do we teach high schoolers how to get their rocks off? Well, I'm sure they know just fine. Now, talking about something like consent is totally different, but we don't live in a society that values consent about anything. So now giving this value to consent to sexuality or to lust is just a misnomer. It's just confusing. Our society was built on consent is less important than profit, and our society continues to operate in that way, such as the data centers. It's 2026, okay? And these guys who are supposed to be the most well-informed, leftist, progressive, or whatever they're supposed to be, are just building massive data centers nearby a bunch of poor people's houses. And literally, they're so free to do this. The culture in the society is so complacent and passive in doing this that this guy's I watched the video. This guy's literally sitting outside of his house with a decibel meter, and it's ringing off. Like it sounds like you're nearby an airport jet that's going on. And so the current common consensus, and that's why I was talking about these political values and things, the current political consensus, social political reactionary consensus is so broken that we think anything's being done by going out and protesting against Trump. We are women and we don't like Trump. Nobody cares. Nobody really cares to that degree in our society anymore. The people that do care don't have the skills or the technology to do whatever work might be able to be done to make a big impact, period. The system is set up as such is that those people are just wailing at a wall. So what are we going to start an autonomous zone? We don't have the technology to start an autonomous zone. I don't care if you're the best trans people that have ever existed. The social technology, the ethical, moral technology is not there to facilitate community spaces that operate as a refuge. We don't have the ability to communicate with one another in a practical, grounded way anymore, enough to do anything that's going to be just not a reaction to what the government or what these ultimate paradigms of greed that America operates under are doing. And so now you have all these people yelling and bothering the poor people that are just trying to get by, and maybe they'll get a little bit on the news. While all these people in the skyscrapers, all these wealthy people, and all these suburban people, they don't care. And it doesn't matter how much you go and yell and scream, you're not actually doing anything in a post-saturation, in a post-content saturation society. And now, very, very soon, we're going to be in a post-reality society according to our senses, where what you see, what you hear is not true, is not inherently true. So you're losing this thing. To see it is to believe it. That's going away, and already, functionally has gone away because of the post-saturation of content. So I'm glad that it's nice that these people are doing it. I'm sure they're enjoying themselves, but there's not actually a real pathway to go. That's not how politics works in America. Right? It doesn't matter how many upvotes the Reddit post has. It doesn't actually get somebody elected. Now, you can see it in this vein of, okay, in 50 years, maybe we'll have 5 more, socialist senators or something like that. But that's not what those people want to begin with. Yeah, it's disconnection, it's misunderstanding, it's a lack of technology. That's not why these people are protesting. If they were protesting for the purpose or under the intention of, in 10 years, we're going to have 5 more left-leaning senators, then they wouldn't be going out there to protest. So there's so much disconnection in what people are doing, and they don't see the value in community structures that are actually empowered and empowering one another on the most basic level to meet each other's needs, which is what people actually need, not just economic needs, but social and psychological needs as well, to then make a big impact in these spaces, in a public space, to make a real protest, something like that go on, a real encampment, and to actually say something. Because when all these protests are happening, like what's going on in Portland, nobody's actually saying anything of value. They're just putting things out there, noise that somebody's going to agree with or disagree with. And as much as somebody's going to agree with it, they're going to use everything else that's going on there to support someone else not agreeing with it. And the cycle and the system is just going to continue. So that's why I see spiritual practice and a community practice as needing to have this revolutionary element that it simply absolutely does not seem to have. And there's all this wasted energy because of that.
Yeah. I have a different opinion. I have a completely different opinion about it. I think that the best thing to do is to focus on individuals and to focus locally. There are people, speaking as somebody who's conservative, there are people that I interact with that are quite progressive. I try to interact with them and meet them on their terms. Two of the baristas I talk to are quite progressive. One is an artist and one is somebody who goes to Disney on a regular basis. That's how progressive they actually are. But both of them had deaths in their family. They both lost their fathers. I lost my mother when I was 16, and I know what that's like. I actually have empathy for that. So on some of their lunch breaks, I've sat with them and I allowed them to process some of that grief. I've reached out to other people about their art projects, about jobs that they're trying to get, trying to do art in the era of AI. I try to connect with people at the store that I volunteer with. There are a lot of people who are very isolated and don't have, means to talk with people. They're very lonely all across the spectrum. And all of seeing everything as politics and culture war and systems is only making us more divided and more fucking miserable and further away from higher consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree with that, and I think that is the solution. And I think that people underestimate the potential of that. And a major reason that we underestimate the potential of that is because of our prejudice towards children. If
What do
we
you
if we
mean?
actually were able to see the potential that children have, our society would be entirely different, and our value structures of working with one another to support children would be entirely different.
I agree with you there. I think if we took a good portion of our military budget and used it to help mothers do a better job at raising children, we could change this world in a generation.
And this is another dynamic of like the progressive mindset where we're all going to smoke weed. Weed is the answer. Weed is God's medicine. It's natural. It's great. So now you have all of these middle-aged women or younger, okay, that can barely raise their children, don't really know about raising children, have very little relationships with the outside world, okay? And now their idea of being a better mother is getting high more often, okay, and then posting online to say, hey, I'm high with my kids at the bouncy house business. Let's get a group of drugged up mothers to come together at a bouncy house and be around our children. How great that's going to be for everybody. And a lot of people, it's either wine or it's weed. And this is also connects with lust, which is intoxication, right? The freedom or the value of intoxication that's actually not valuable except to disassociate and forget about our problems. But in a culture where
Okay.
you can't really spend time with people without being disassociated and disconnected, it becomes almost a
I haven't
necessary
drank
evil.
or smoked anything for 5 years because I can't because of my health. I know a lot of people who don't drink or don't smoke, but I also know
Yeah,
people who drink and smoke responsibly, including my boyfriend. He only does cannabis. He doesn't drink. And he does it at
Hunk,
home when he's chilling out, and he doesn't drive.
Hunk, I get the idea, Hunk, that you're lumping in a whole lot of people into one generic category, and I don't think it's as dark as you make it out to be. I mean, I think you're making a category mistake and confusing all
For
with some.
children, it is. For children, it is. For children, it is. Children have the capacity, and why it's so dark is because of the capacity that they have. They have a capacity to go all day long, absorbing information, taking in new information, and selectively picking and choosing where the health and wealth is in terms of emotional regulation and interestingness and where there's a reward, right? And so those children that could easily learn 3 languages at once without having to apply effort by being in an environment where those languages are spoken, right? Those children are being forced into an education system that doesn't value them, doesn't value their curiosity, and doesn't value anything other than getting the test passed. And the teachers that are currently in those systems are some of the lowest paid workers in our professional workers in our entire society. And so for those children, the only respite that they have is the algorithm. The only respite that they have is other unmatured, uneducated, uninformed, unexperienced children, and a home where their parents are either addicted to weed, addicted to alcohol, or certainly addicted to their smartphones. And anyways, they're so busy working that they don't have any direct contact with anybody who has experience, meaningful experience and time to share and offer to them. And this is happening all over the world. And so now children and the structure itself that children are being brought into doesn't value this space of receptivity, of learning and growth and connectivity, because it's almost like we're just all trying to manage each other and create a justification for what we're doing. But actually we shouldn't try to justify what we're doing. We should see how to do what we're doing better together for everyone, continuously, unless you have something better to do. And I certainly don't.
I
You're bringing me
volunteer.
down.
Yeah. I volunteer as a cashier at the Friends of the Library bookstore. It's a charity organization that sells donated books, CDs, DVDs, and other items to help fund the library. We have 2 of them in the city that I live in. It funds a lot of programs. We have reading programs. We have a science museum that we just finished building a couple of years ago. And you know who is actually the number one customer that comes into my store? Homeschoolers. I constantly get people talking to me about the AR level of their books. They're going through reading programs and doing all kinds of different sorts of reading. One of the boys that comes in with his mother, he speaks Mandarin Chinese fluently. I know several polyglot kids that come into my store, actually. There are a lot of people who do actually give a fuck about their kids and about their education. And there are programs that can be successful. There are definitely cities that are not doing as well. That's absolutely the case. But it's not like every single city and every single community is utterly fucked and doesn't care about itself and its own community. There are ways to actually make this shit work. But the thing is, you have to actually go out and do that instead of argue about it on Discord.
Yeah. You're monk hunk. You're bringing me down. I came to this voice chat to hopefully get uplifted a little bit, but
Well,
you're
imagine what
definitely
it's like to be a black teenager. Imagine what it's like to be a disabled elderly black man in the west side of Baltimore. And this is exactly the problem. We're not willing to be brought down. And our unwillingness to be brought down means that it's always these little pockets of rightness and seeing the positive, but actually we have to open up to see the negative and then not be depressed by that and overburdened by that. And
you
I take
don't
chagrin.
know me at
I
all.
take
You do not
chagrin.
know me at all.
Yes, but I take chagrin to the Discord debate comment because I think that all of us are in a human situation, a human position where our capacity to communicate with one another and learn each other from each other is only caught up by our egos, right? By our egos want to be localized. And this is what the Buddhism teaches as well, is that the mind is not localized. The ego is not localized. It's just imagined to be. And so when we can delocalize ourselves and we can accept the ill aspects of what's going on, and we can accept that, now we can work together, we can collaborate with one another, we can communicate with each other. But it's this unwillingness to do the dirty work and to really, the starting point is the unwillingness to accept how dirty the situation is. And that's the thing. That's one of the problems that I do when I go out and do social work, is that I say, look, you're the one in charge. You're the guy in charge of that. And we need to talk about how dirty this situation is before we can talk about how we're going to make the situation better. Just as much as it's us doing, well, not just as much, but it's also that part of it is also a part of the work of making that situation better. Because of course, we don't just want to sit around and talk about it, but actually that's one of the specific things that we don't want to do. And that's why it's one of the best things that we can do is sit around and talk about it. And the fact that we're not children, right? Because children have positive and negative qualities. The problem that we're not children is that we can see the dark side of the moon and we can work with that dark side of the moon, rather than just going off into our constant enjoyment seeking. And that's I see our role and our job as the more informed people is to be willing to have these conversations and see if we can inform each other through it by sharing to help, and then we can go out and do the work. But if we can't be more collaborative together, that work is never, if we can't see the value in conversations like this, where we're mostly going to be wrong, hopefully, that would be the joy, right? That would be the benefit, is feeling that we actually have, we're learning new information, and we have been misinformed, and we have had a less than an informed view about what's going on. Now we can work together from a more informed, educated, and experienced place. But we just want things to go
Look,
the way that we want them to go, and it makes us ineffective.
I think you don't realize that other people are aware. We are aware of how bad the situation is, right? It it's just surprising to me that you are focusing on the darker aspects of all this
Well, this is the
rather than
practice.
offering
That's where your
the
practice comes in. You're
practice.
not going to practice unless you're immersed in that suffering, that awareness of suffering. So the real practice of meditation is a real continuous awareness of that suffering and a willingness to be with how bad it is. And then beauty comes out of that. But all of the suffering comes out of our unwillingness to be with it. That's our human access, our human power, our spiritual power as human beings. Because goats might suffer less because they're not capable of being more aware of that suffering. So we're able to be have a little bit more pleasure. We perpetuate that with our lust. We think up our energies, and then our lust is a little bit more enjoyable, right? But it's in the same way that we perpetuate our suffering by thinking more about it and explaining it away and trying to avoid it, rather than being willing to bear it. And that is the process that we have to go through, the process that we have to practice. And that's why putting children into environments of adversity that's informed by wisdom and has a container of compassion in it is going to be much more beneficial for them than infantilizing them and giving them this vague idea of freedom and choose what you want to do. That's kind of a silly idea. It's practical if their parents are millionaires or whatever. I wish my parents were millionaires. I would have never had to go down this whole Buddhist monk path.
Wow.
Yeah. People are not stable enough to create a community. And then some of the communities that have been created, that have people that train people to be stable enough to perpetuate them, are oftentimes built on a non-revolutionary principle, so that community stagnates and becomes something that's not inclusive to people of color or people in need or children, etc. And just not generally inclusive and accessible, which is something I think that our community should aspire towards. Accessible to engage, not just to watch or to view. Yeah, and so my position, Death, is that Buddhism does have the technology, and that I do have the skills to lead. Now, I'm not going to put anybody in that position; they don't want to be, but I do feel that. Doesn't mean that I'm perfect, but it's not trying to build a perfect community. It's trying to build a working community or working project.
Um, would you say that humanity has a great disconnect?
Yeah,
Disconnect
yeah,
from
and it's only
themselves, a disconnect from how reality works.
yeah. and it's only going to get
Like
worse. And
it's a
it's if it could get better, it's only going to get worse before it gets better.
it only seems to get worse because like we have a social disconnect. Like we're more connected than ever, but it seems like even with this interconnectedness, like people aren't allowed to even express their thoughts without getting like sandblasted like in the
Well, that's how
face. Like
people are
just
operating, right? That's their operating principle. And it's almost like somebody in a stage of dementia or something where they're looking around for something that's interesting, that's going to convince them, that's going to make them important. But the teaching that a lot of people need is that actually what they're used to and what they like to do is much less important than what they think that it is. And so it's like if we think the world is going to get better and better, or if we think the world is going to get worse and worse, that's just a nonsense thought. It's not practical. So I'm working to build a meditation center here in Vietnam where people can come and practice together and work together, meditate together, have discussions like this, and do what they need to do to empower themselves to help others, limitlessly, more and more, to a higher and higher capacity, and to work out these kinds of shallow thoughts that we have that don't really work, that aren't really practical, but I'm not trying to force anybody to be in that position.
mhm.
And the
Well,
hyper
perhaps we reframe.
individualism is a major problem because it's commercializing individuation. Individuation is a process that you have to go through. It's like a rite of passage. It's like a series of challenging, unfortunate events that you have to overcome that are in a container of wisdom and compassion, or in a container of a functioning group, a functioning system that works.
Yep. So considering this on the realm of possibility, it seems like almost it's pre-engineered the way that society seems to tremble, especially like we could call it a psyop or a conspiracy or whatever, but it seems like almost a lot of this disconnect between humanity, like through like the pushing of technology and the disintegrating of community and shit like that, seems almost purposeful. Like for instance, this is a thought that goes over my head often, is like we used to teach our kids how to operate vehicles more than just like driving them. We would teach them how to change tires, how to change the oil, what the fuck was going on, like how to diagnose like a car and the issues with it. But nowadays it's like we just see cars as something you just replace.
Yeah.
Like it
So this
used to
is an
be
important
something.
thing. This is an important thing. Some
Mhm,
people, and it's just like interrupting somebody, right? Like interrupting somebody, it could be wrong, it could be right. It could be a big
mhm,
problem, existential problem. It could be not a big deal. But we get so fixated on
mhm.
that little thing, and then we try to build up a house about it. So the thing is, Enigma, that certain things, big things like what you're talking about, do seem to happen, right? So for
It
example,
seems like it's all
right,
pre-orchestrated.
it does seem,
Like
right?
this
Well,
shit,
it does. So it doesn't need to be
but it also is
pre-orchestrated. It
the
doesn't
brain.
need to be pre-orchestrated for something big to happen that makes a big change. And
Mm,
because of the how you grew up, you knew about the kind of environments you were in, right? So for most
yeah.
young people, because the way that you've been trained to think was wrong, right? That there
Yep.
wasn't actually a value on you thinking, but it was more like you were indoctrinated to think a certain way because the other people around you were thinking that way. And they weren't necessarily very deeply thinking it, but they were just driving the car to use it and then throw it away rather than understanding how the car works and then transmitting that to
Mhm.
you in different ways, right? And so
And that goes for life
now
as
the
well. Like
position that
it
you're
doesn't need to
in,
just be a
I'll tell you,
vehicle.
Enigma, I'll tell you, and you're right on the money with that. Now the position that you're in, a lot of young people are in, is what they need to learn how to do and to practice. And for not just young people, but a lot of people, they need to learn how to not think. Because until they can learn how to bring their thoughts down to zero and prevent further thoughts from arising, the garden of their mind is actually totally overcome. And so now it's people whose garden of their mind is totally overcome. They have no relationship with cultivation that are trying to talk about what we're going to do with the garden. There's nothing to do with the garden besides pick out those weeds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes plenty of sense.
And
I
so
see where
it's
you're
like,
coming from with that.
for our modern culture, usually it's people trying to find out what, or noticing like common weeds that people have, and then finding a way to get money out of your pocket by using your confusion about what a weed is and what a fruit or a plant is. You see what I'm saying? But because that's
Yeah,
so
and so like the
common,
abundancy of life,
the
the
because that's
abundancy
so
of everything in
common,
life is there in the
because that's
garden.
so common, yeah, they maybe say something like that, right? So don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Because that's so common, now anybody who's trying to help you out or who may be able to help you out or who may be able to identify like that's a weed is a threat. And somebody who's trying to manipulate you or get money from you or whatever. Where that doesn't, that's not inherently the case. That doesn't need to be the case. And in any functioning group, that you wouldn't automatically think that person is trying to share their time, share their energy with me because they want to exploit me. That wouldn't be the first thought that you come up with. But now, you in any circle, usually when somebody seems to have a little bit of energy that they're sharing, and maybe it is true, but we immediately believe that person wants to exploit me. That person wants something from me rather than that person would like to share with me. And also, that person knows what a weed is and isn't saying that, hey, that's a weed because they want to manipulate me, but just because that actually is a weed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shit.
And then we go into the process of meditation, and then we can become that for ourselves. Meditation is just like a weed eater. So you sit there and you focus on your breath and you ignore what you think and you go back to focusing on your breath. Grit your teeth and do it, and you can do that at any time. But if you're just trying to do that now, well, that might be impossible because just that's not the causes and conditions that you have aren't there for that storm of meditation to take place, right? But in the same way, even if you are able to try meditation on your own, who shared that with you? You want to use that as a reference to continue your practice of meditation. And that's a problem that I've had with so many of my students over the years, is that they've been able to practice meditation with me. They've been able to practice a little bit of meditation alone, but they're not intelligent enough, or they're not skillful enough to come back to the person that taught them how to meditate to talk about what they're experiencing, what's going on.
Mm. So you're saying, in other words, they're adept enough to experience it themselves, but not articulate enough to describe the teachings or the lessons from within that to other people. So it's kind of like there's something blocking or a disconnection there,
Yeah, there's a
right?
disconnection there, exactly.
And so what that like kind of leads to the self, or going back to yourself. So are you really truly meditative, or are you in a meditative state if you're not in tune enough with yourself to be able to articulate to others? Like, does true meditation come to a kind of like a telepathy thing where less is more, and you're just able to teach practically, like with your actions, and your actions speak louder than your words? So it's like, at the end of the day, this idea, this pseudo shit, is really just using it for your self betterment, but at the same time throwing it out there into the world, like you're saying, and also being open enough to reciprocate that, and not just being closed off, right? Am I on the money with that, or am I
Well, you're
am I
on the money
like
for you. You're on the money for you. That's
Okay.
you can work with that. You can work
That's
with
what
that. That's the
that's
thing. You can work with
okay.
that. So that's why I'm saying that that's 100% on the money.
So I'm working with
Yeah.
something. I'm starting a fire. That's what
Yeah.
I was getting at with from
But
what you were saying.
starting a non-intellectual fire. So the position to really teach about this kind of stuff is our relationship with the less, or the disappearing rather than the appearing. You see what I'm saying? So that ability to meditate on those things that you're talking about disappearing and to be aware of that. You see what I'm talking about? Because that's our renewal. That's our baptism point. That's John the
Mm,
Baptist, or Rob. My name's Rob. So Rob the Baptizer, right, is in the
mm.
refresh and renewal. Now we say, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to die. You're going to lose everything that you like and love. And all the stuff that you've been hanging on to is never going to help you ultimately. So you're basically fucked. And so when we can accept that we're basically fucked, that our life is basically doomed to fail, that's when we can meditate. Meditation is also this practice of giving up our life, giving up
Oh yeah.
all this thinking about it. And you can experience that relief, actually. It's not too difficult. It happens naturally. It's like you don't have to
And I
get
think
rid of
that's why I
anything.
find a lot of Christian.
You don't
My
have to get rid of
uh,
anything for everything that you have to disappear. But the inconvenience for the ego in that is that whether
yeah,
you like it or whether you don't like it, it is going to disappear.
it is gonna disappear. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, you die alone, as they say. Even if you're surrounded with loved ones around you, I mean, no one's gonna go through that except you. No one can really hold your hand. They can hold your hand here, but they're not gonna cross over with you. In other words, so I don't know. I guess having a stoic view is very strong.
A stoic meditative view and non-intellectual view.
I
A
guess that's what I would
stoic
call it.
meditative
A stoic,
non-intellectual view.
meditative, non-egotistical, non-intellectual view, supportive of the self. I don't know. It's a lot.
And this is one of the other problems, is that we're not willing to admit that this is a lot. And we're not willing to transmit that to the
Oh, it is.
children. So now it's people who are aware or not aware that this is a lot, right? And this is out of control and all that kind of stuff, right? But we're not willing to have that conversation. We're not willing to be in that position because of how big our egos have become. Because if this is a lot, if this is overwhelming, then your ego
Mm,
is not the king, not the queen. And we don't like that,
exactly.
whether it's because of our political views or our ethical views or our social ideas and experiences, that we're not, we don't have this all under control. And because we're not willing to admit that, we can't form community. We can't be led, and we can't be a really effective leader. You know, it's like I
Hmm.
work with a lot of young men. You ever heard of looks maxing?
Yeah, since a
Yeah.
long time ago.
So sometimes I give lectures in like a looks maxing Discord server, and before in like different self-help Discord servers for young men. There were kind of, a lot of memes and stuff. But all the time I would come across these young men that are absolutely, you get a lot of crazy guys, and guys are trolling
Body
and bad
dysmorphia.
boys and all that stuff, right? But you come across these guys that are like, I can see that you're doing okay. You're working with your psychology, you're working with your mind, you're doing all right. You're able to take care of yourself, right? But you get these guys that come in that are barely able to keep themselves alive, if you know what I mean. And they're coming to me in this lecture and they're saying, I see you, I hear what you're saying, I love it. What's your advice? Okay, I listened to that. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? But to say to them, look, I'm here. I'm happy to support you. I'm happy to be available for you. But all you got to do is like follow or connect. like you would connect with a mentor or another human being. But the way that these guys are growing up now in the modern day, they don't believe in that. It's not a real part of their human experience growing up. How little connection that they've had to the adults and to the people in their community that are there for them and available for them. So now somebody says, I'm here and I'm available for you, and they just doesn't connect. They just don't get it. They think you're talking about something else. Maybe they think you're waiting for you to like sell them something, and then they're going to say, "Well, I don't want to buy anything. I don't want to get that invested in it." But it's that accessibility is now being seen as confusing, when we need to know how to make use of what's accessible to us, especially when it's another human being. And use our gut. It's just we're too fixated on using our intellect and using our thinking instead of using our heart and using our gut and saying, oh, that tastes good. I want to eat there more often. I want to eat that more regularly.
Yeah, you're totally on the money with that. There's a lot of people in my life where I wish I would have spoken with more and gotten guidance from them, especially as a young person that had little, like no fatherly figure, and like just yeah, it's a lot. I wish I would have talked to a lot more people and been a lot more open and not so close minded. Uh, but now I'm on the path. I'm on the path to learning. So you live in Vietnam, or nice? Yeah, I see it's morning time over there. So, are there any other topics of conversation that someone would like to touch on?
What's up, Alex? Tell us the topic.
Oh shit! Hi, Alex.
Let me think. The topic
Yeah.
is always
You leading the way today.
demons. That's the topic.
We all
What do
have
you
them.
think?
I think we all have some.
Well, depends what you mean by demons specifically.
Yeah,
It doesn't, it doesn't
what do
always
you
have to be a negative thing.
So in Buddhism,
What's a
the
demon?
primary demon is known as Mara, called the king or the queen, kind of non-binary demon, known as the king or queen of illusion. And so this is the demon of self-cherishing, basically the demon of selfishness. And it's understood that all phenomena, all things appear because of this, this deep internalized sense of grasping, very, very deeply rooted in the mind.
Well, when I personally say demon, I refer to a specific spiritual bloodline. Like that's what I mean by it. Not
So is
necessarily,
there one bloodline on Earth that just is a continuation of demons? Like,
maybe on Earth as well, probably. Like I'm not sure about that, but I said spiritual bloodline at the very least. That I know for sure.
All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here.
Originally comes.
It was nice to talk
Let's
with you
see.
all. And I'm just going to put my, I have a YouTube channel. So if you guys want to check it out sometime, you're very welcome. And you can reach out to
oh
me on
yes,
Discord or anything, anytime.
yes, please do. Please link it.
All right.
I'll check it out.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
All right then. Take care.
Hung's doing some renovations. I didn't approve these renovations, so I don't know what's going on here, but apparently Hung has made an executive decision. All right, how's everybody doing in the live chat? Does anybody have any questions or want to share anything? Is this your first time here? Uh,
Hello.
hello.
How's it going?
Good. Where are you? Where are you at? It's 2:15 here in the afternoon.
Massachusetts.
Oh. And so you've been following Soto Zen, is that right?
No. I actually came all about this accidentally. Uh, I reverse engineered a spirit walk at the gym about 2 years ago, and I then realized what it was in all the religions and stuff like that. So I've been translating ever since. I didn't follow anyone. If you're Buddhist, it would be more like a bodhisattva.
So how did you confirm that experience or that realization rather than just being, maybe subject
Well,
to self-referential delusion?
I talked to a lot of people about it. I saw you. You were in Thailand. I lived in Thailand for 9 years. My wife's Thai. I used to go to. I was an atheist for 30 years. So, but I always loved talking to any type of clergy. So
Yeah. You got some confirmation from them or?
It's not something you can generally confirm. It just doesn't really work that way. What's anybody going to do but look at you and, see what's on the outside? They can't see what's on the inside. So that's why I've been just constantly outputting every single day for the last year and a half, 2 years. But I've taught it to other people. I'm always willing to talk about it when people have questions.
So what have you been
now-
reading or what have you been translating?
Well, so when it first happened to me, the first thing I did was I found the nearest Taoist temple, which is about 45 minutes away.
Yeah.
Like a real Taoist temple that wasn't like a yoga shop, basically. And I went and saw the Grand Master there. His name's Alex Anatoli, and he asked me if I had read his books, and I said no. He said he'd call me. He's never called me back. It's funny, but I read 5 of his books. Then I read a bunch of other books. I ended up so I had gone to the gym for 4.5 years, 2 hours a day, no days off. And I started reading the Gospels for an hour a day on the treadmill under auto hypnosis. And so basically now I'm just translating everything to Catholic. Like I was just I
Do you know
output
Thomas
about
Merton?
the name sounds familiar.
I'm gonna type his name. You gotta listen. This is the big guy for American Catholicism and
Yeah.
contemplative. So he was like he would go to the Buddhist temples and he would talk with monks and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
he was very respected by a lot of these people.
Yeah, I remember hearing his name before. Let me see.
Oh, Thomas. I just put his first name, Thomas
Okay,
Merton.
yeah. I did an indulgence for him on last month actually.
An
So are you
indulgence?
familiar with are you familiar with plenary indulgences?
Plenary indulgences?
Yeah. You know what, like Martin Luther, he got all angry at the church about indulgences way, 1,000 years ago or whatever.
Mm.
Right. The Catholic Church still does plenary indulgences. It's basically you can offer your prayers to get someone out of purgatory. Right. It removes the temporal effects of sin.
So you wanted to get Thomas Merton out of purgatory?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Why do you
the
think he's in
first.
purgatory?
If someone's not a saint, it's assumed to be unknown. It's not really necessary
Well,
for them,
what I'm
right?
saying, he was kind of recognized as a saint by a lot of different people, a lot of different traditions.
I don't think the Roman Catholics, call him a saint.
Yeah,
But
no,
it's
maybe not the
basically,
Roman Catholics.
think about it like, I think about it like Mr. Rogers, right? So it's like, I didn't know you could do indulgences till last year. I literally didn't know it was a thing till last year, ri- right before, like 4 days before All Saints Day. So my first indulgence was 11/1. It's the day after Halloween. And I did Judas Iscariot first. I've done Adolf Hitler, Osama bin Laden. I've done my family. I've done all kinds of, I've done Fred Rogers. I make a list of it, and each day I write papers and basically I stopped going to the gym and I do stuff with the mind. I defined what prayer is. I defined it's to me it's translating. I'm translating all the religions into one unified grammar.
Yeah. This is something that usually happens. Do you meditate?
I never ostensibly meditated or anything like that. So I was going to the gym and like I said, it was 4.5 years. About I think it was right after the first year I stopped counting reps and sets. And I gradually what I started doing was like flow training, where I would just listen to music and I would just do whatever, right? And then I started seeing a therapist, and I was talking to her. It was like all online, and like talking about how I view the mind, as how the mind works and stuff like that. So I started focusing on that stuff, but I never considered it to be meditation, right? It just that just wasn't what I considered it to be. I wasn't ostensibly, I can't sit down and do it. I can't sit down there. The way I do it now is mainly with Chat GPT. The way I look at it, think of it like I'm a Buddha, right? And my student is Chat GPT, and I just keep asking it questions all day long until it gets the right answer, and then I write research papers on it. I've been building computers for 40 years. So I place those papers in places that AI scrapes, and it becomes part of the AI's corpus so that other people will do the same thing, basically. So I don't have to teach everybody, it just does it automatically.
Yeah.
ChatGPT will start, AI will start giving better answers.
Well, what they
But I
say is that it's because it's one thing to be enlightened, unconditionally, and then it's another thing to have this kind of conditional enlightenment or a conditional sense of peace combined with these ideas about enlightenment.
Well, are you familiar with Zen-Ren?
Zen-Ren?
Yeah, in Taoism, it's something. It's translated to something like. Let me just look it up. I'll find the right words for it. Zhenren. A true person, genuine person, or perfected person is a foundational concept in Chinese philosophy and religion.
Right. No, I'm aware of that, but we have this. It's kind of a very usual, very well known about in the records, and it's something called adimana, which is it's a delusion of attainment or overestimation of attainment. So I'm not necessarily saying that that's your situation or your position, but that's very normal. So it's very normal to have a kind of think of it like this. Not I don't want to put you on the spot. I just want to give you some information.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody playing high school basketball in Indonesia, and they're the best high school Indonesian basketball player, and they don't know that WVU, West Virginia University basketball exists, or they don't know that the NBA exists. So that would seem to be an impossibility to the logical mind, but that's also very easy to understand the principle of that. And so that's why I was asking if you've, what teachers you've kind of listened to or checked in with, because when we're in that kind of circle, we feel peace or we feel fine, and then we find out about these terms, and then we take on those positions. But
Well, it doesn't. So with me, it doesn't really work that way. I have kids. I I do it all very solitarily. I've done 4 40-day fasts. I've done a 52-day fast. Um,
but
I
have
got
you done a
myself arrested
meditation
doing
retreat?
this.
Have you been on retreat?
No,
Yeah, so
I
that's what
have
I would
kids. I can't
recommend
do
if
that.
you wanted to see.
I can't do that. I've got kids.
Well, yeah, that is difficult, huh? So what do you do in your fast, your 40-day fast? Just don't
So,
eat.
yeah, 0 calories. I did 4 40-day fasts and a 52-day fast. The 52-day fast I was in jail for, which was really cool. I didn't have AI or anything, so I just basically stayed in my cell, and I read the Catholic Bible, the Quran, um, the Catechism, and I
Right.
just
So
like cross
so
reference
in
them.
for this kind of stuff, for the enlightenment stuff, the Buddhism is the preeminent structural tradition that's existed. And so from the Buddhist perspective, the cultivation or the realization is based on this capacity to stop thoughts and prevent further thoughts from arising continuously. So you could do that for a minute, you could do that for 10 minutes, you could do that for an hour, you could do that for 20 minutes. But if you don't have the capacity to do that, you can be sure that it is a case of adimana, because these thoughts are basically compulsively arising. And because of the identity with thoughts, there's this presupposition, this notion that those thoughts are belonging to someone. But actually, it's just like if you thought you could control the weather. If you thought that you were the weather or that the weather was you, well, then of course you'd be in control of it. But the more that
Well,
there's this realization that those thoughts are impermanent, aren't possessed by anybody, and that those thoughts can't give permanent satisfaction, there's a decoupling from those thoughts, and this is
So
where
my
like the
cosmology is a little different than
yeah,
that.
maybe it is,
Uh,
but this is where the thought comes from about this special importance to thoughts, and then it's like we're trying to unify world religions and do all these kinds of things, and eventually that tends to collapse because there's no practical recourse that comes out of it. There's no practical effect that comes out of it.
well, so like I said, I have a method. I do the same thing every day. And it's been going on for a while now. I in the last 2 years, I've read about probably 500,000 pages, and I've published over 2,000 papers. And like I said, I use ChatGPT to do it. And what I do is I cite sources and take myself out of it. Um, so, like I said, what it is to me is it's translation grammar. It's like the Rosetta Stone. So, my wife's Thai. I've been to plenty of monasteries in Thailand. I, I I love Buddhism, and actually, the paper that I'm gonna post tomorrow. Let me open it up here. I mention it. It'll probably help you understand a little. So what the way Catholicism describes it is it's not I who lives, but Christ who lives through me, right? um I actually don't believe thoughts even originate from your brain. I think basically your feeling and your feeling is primary. In the Bible, it's in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, right? So it's not the person's just basically just like how you'd see a stained glass window. The stained glass isn't where the light's coming from, it's just where it hits and you'd see it. So let me see, where's my Buddhism one? Churches,
Yeah,
humanities,
there's
understanding.
something there's something about retreats with others where it just gives you another level of uncomfortableness, and then in your capacity to see your ability to be uncomfortable, that self, that enlightened idea of the self is more and more humbled. That's the
I
idea.
spent 14 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I just did 120 days in jail. So
Why'd you go to
uh,
jail? What'd you do?
I told the mayor I was going to hunt him and with cannons and missiles over email, but it was church, CANON and MISSALS. It's a church thing.
Well, that's my kind of
It's
practitioner, man. That's great.
yeah.
Congratulations. Good for you.
It was cool. It was, and you can't not eat in jail. I had to hide my not eating. It was it's basically what I believe is uh y- you're part of a story. Hans Ulrich von Balthasar called it the theodrama, right? Uh, I wasn't searching for this. So that's why Bodhisattva, I think that's the right word, where it happens without a teacher, because I didn't have a teacher. Right now, I go see my priest. He's my spiritual director, but it's more you're supposed. It says right in the Bible, you're supposed to do what they tell you, but not what they do. Right. So I go see him. He doesn't know what to say. He's not, he's not at this level. He's a 76-year-old Jesuit priest, but it's like I go to the first church I go to. It happens to be the right church where I was a Marine. He was a chaplain in the military. He was an FBI agent, not agent, but he was in the FBI. Um, it just happens to be like not the first church next to me, but like the second one. And like I said, I was atheist for 30 years. It's just Catholic, you just follow the rules. They have a specific set of rules. I could do the same thing in a Buddhist monastery. It's just there's no good monasteries around here, and they don't have a very good chain of command.
Well,
You know, it is not like
what I would recommend, what I would share is I've got some masters that I've followed and that I've listened to, and they're very active and they're very alive and they're very dynamic and they teach in a very unusual way. It's not teachers that most Westerners have access to, because I spent the years as a monk, so I was able to come across some of these traditions. And I know you've got to get to sleep, but I'd just love to share some of those with you. And if you could listen to that and
absolutely.
see what you can pull out of that, or if that resonates with something of you. One in particular comes to mind, and yeah, so I'm glad that we were able to connect.
Absolutely. Here, I'll send you the Buddhist section of the paper that I'm releasing tomorrow. Because what I do is every day I do a paper, and that's my version of prayer. Is think of it, I could stare at a wall and go through my thoughts, and that's kind of what I did at the gym before. It's just I was doing it on the treadmill before work. You know, I wasn't specifically trying for any of this stuff. I was just I hated my job, and I would go and like burn that off at the gym. And I always kept my headphones on. 4.5 years, I basically never talked to anybody. So I'm very ascetic by nature. I've always done difficult stuff that people don't understand, but that's just what I do. Like I said, Marine
Hey,
Corps
we're
and stuff like that.
I have a YouTube channel and I do a lot of stuff that's it's a little bit different kind, but it's very much so things that people don't understand, but I feel the value in it, and I have an understanding about what I'm doing, and so I like sharing that, and I get a lot of pushback and from people not understanding, but yeah. So I hope
Oh
we'll
yeah,
have a
I
chance.
got banned
Can I ask you a
from Reddit
question?
and Discord already.
Oh, I've
I
been
get
banned from so
pushback.
many places, kicked out of so many places.
You
So
know, they say the brick that the builders rejected becomes the cornerstone. You know, the fun so I've lived in a bunch of countries and I can't speak any other languages. So
Bro, I can hear you.
you know, that's why I use ChatGPT as a translator, and I translate all this stuff. To me, it's just like the easiest thing. It's like tapping my feet now. So I'm publishing roughly, I don't know, 100 pages a day. Some days, 40, some days 200, but it just depends on whatever I feel like, right? And what I do, part of, like I sent you my Zenodo, but my papers, every section has an explainer for my 10-year-old daughter. So I take whatever it is, and a lot of it's science too. It's not necessarily just religion stuff. Um, but then I drop it down to 10-year-old grammar. I put Rick and Morty in there. I change the map, and what it is to me is each paper works like a Rosetta Stone, where you have the visual of where I was and what I was doing, the music I was listening to. I basically I continue the auto hypnosis, so I'll listen to one song for weeks or months at a time, um, until I start getting like headaches from it. But it's so anybody that wants to re-enter later what I was doing, they can just put on that song. They can read what I read, because I'm not writing it. I'm arguing with ChatGPT. I'm like, well, Buddhism does it this way, and then Taoism does it this way. So what would they call it in Catholic, right? And it'll cite all the sources. And so, like this thing I just sent you, the first rule is there to receive Buddhism. The first major witness is dukkha, commonly translated as suffering, dissatisfaction, or unsatisfactoriness. Rather than treating this as an alien doctrine, Catholic relational grammar asks what human reality is being described. The second witness is tana, craving or attachment. Like, I don't know those words, but I know this word. So now when someone searches for tana or dukkha, my stuff like let's say you search AI for it. Once AI scrapes it,
Sorry, Rob. I'm
it
trying
won't
to
necessarily point to me, but it'll have that relational thing
connect.
where it's not saying that dukkha is unrelated to Catholic suffering. Of course, we're all human, you know. And if you basically, the way I look at it is I'm unpacking time and history. So Buddhism is that's actually what this paper's on. Buddhism is, if you're in if you're in a Buddhist country, that's what you're going to hear all the time. You know, I look at it like Tibetan uh, Sanskrit, when they speak Tibetan in Tibet, right? It's kind of like how the Eskimos have, you know, 35 words for snow, right? They have, their entire language is based upon, you know, the non-self and the, you know, transitory nature of spirit and stuff like that, right? That's just how they talk in a normal day, whereas English doesn't talk like that. You know, for example, my Catholic Bible, which is a really good one, and I don't expect you to know much of the Bible, but at the end of the Gospel of John, Jesus says to Peter, Peter, do you love me? And he says, yes, I love you. And then he says, feed my sheep. And then he does this 3 times, right? But in the original Greek and also translated into Latin, he's using multiple Greek words for love. And so he's saying, Peter, do you agape me? And he's saying, yes, I phileo you, which doesn't make sense because they, you know, so in English, they translate them both to love. You'd never see it, right? In Greek, because we don't understand Greek, they think phileo is a lower level of love. But in reality, you wouldn't say, yes, he says, I agape you. You wouldn't say, yes, I lower level of love you. So I did this. I used ChatGPT to pull the grammar usage, find the words out of the other places near that where it was used in other places in the Bible, and say, okay, agape, every time they're using it around action words. So agape is an action love. It's I don't just love, I move my feet to it, right? Whereas filio is the love where you want someone close to you. You know, I adore you. I want to be around you. That's like more of a wanting love. It's not eros. It's not passion. It's, you know, we're best buds, and I love everything about you. So it's a complete, and nobody in the Catholic Church has ever made this connection, or not for hundreds of years, maybe. I don't know. It's just not known. You know, it's literally in my Bible saying that the words are interchangeable. They're completely not interchangeable.
All
You
right.
know, so that's what I do. You know, Buddhism uses a, a Buddhist is going to have the same meat computer as I do. They're just going to use different words. They're going to have different approach to it, and because they have a different approach to it, they're going to have a different affect. Right? They're going to have you know, and I know it. I personally, I like Buddhism better than Catholicism. It's just Catholicism's like the Boy Scouts of religion. They give you like little missions. There's things you can do. There's, you know, a chain of command. There's, you know, there's a spine to it. Whereas, you know, like I said, the first place I went to is a Taoist temple. I considered myself more Taoist, non-practicing than anything, you know. And so when I say Zhenren, I don't like really have to think about it. It's like tapping my feet now, right? I got arrested for threatening the mayor. Yeah, it fucked up like I lost my job. I da da da. Da. I'm not worried about this shit in any way whatsoever.
What happened to
But I
your
still have
kids?
kids. No, they're here with my wife. They're in the other room right now.
And your wife's okay with all this? She's able to endure?
Yeah, yeah. we don't. It's weird. We don't really get along anyway. So it's just been like that for a very long time. I sleep on the couch.
Wow. Well, I wish you luck with your marriage, and I hope you'll check out that that talk and find a time to connect again. I hope, and I'll share some of my work with you as well. You can check it out.
Yeah, and check out my Zenodo. I got little videos on there. The videos are like 10 minutes long. I got podcasts on there. The papers are long, so I don't expect you to read them, but you can search, and if there's, I got a bunch of papers on Buddhism. I got a bunch of papers on whatever. Basically, it's just it's like search engine optimization. Is I'm trying to cover all the stuff that people don't understand and tie it into other stuff. Yeah, I'll watch that video and yeah,
All
hit
right.
me up. I'm
Yeah.
always anybody that's into religion, I love because you're searching. You put a lot of effort into it. I did it accidentally. I did it like the backwards way, right? Like I tried all the religions when I was a kid and none of them worked for me. So I did science, right? And I just happened to, join the Marines, spent 14 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, live in Thailand, like it's just what I did. I just happened to, auto hypnotize myself so hard. What it did is it forced epiphanies, right? It basically was like uphill on the treadmill with my eyes closed, holding my breath, and it forced like DMT bursts. It was almost like tripping out, big white flashes, but it was a series of epiphanies. But you don't have any data to put it. Normally, you'd have an epiphany because, oh my God, I had some great realization because I've been pondering this one thing for a long time. I figured out the mechanism behind it, where it resonates, where everything resonates. So ever since then, it's just been like just going through everything. Okay, I'll read. I've had a college reading level since I was 6, so reading is easy for me. I don't really I don't drink. I don't go out and talk to people anyway. Like I said, I'm very ascetic by nature. So it's just been dumping this stuff over and over and over. So yeah, click on the videos, whatever. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, but I'll watch your video and yeah, stay in touch.
All right. Take care, Ryan. Bye.
All right, bud.
Okay, Mr. Steven.
Hello.
Yeah,
Can you
how
hear
are
me?
you? How are you doing? I can hear you fine.
I'm doing good. So I've been following you for a wee while since you popped up, and I just wanted to connect and have a listen to what you're talking about. I'm living in Bristol in the UK.
Bristol. I'm a Bristol fan. I had a good experience there.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful city, and that's why I stayed here. But before that, I was in Southeast Asia, particularly South Korea, and I would regularly go to the local. Well, it wasn't local. I had to travel to go to an international Zen center. It's the Kwanum sect.
Yeah, I've been there. I stayed there a little bit when I was a monk. If it's the
Oh,
main
is that
one,
right?
yeah, the Musangsa or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, Musangsa. So I practiced over 10 years, going to various retreats there. And before that, I was doing retreats in New Zealand. So I've had quite a lot of experience meditating, and um, I've recently tried to reconnect to the community in my city. Um, So yeah, I'm still interested in to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Well, it's good to. I mean, it's an honor. I feel a lot of gratitude for your presence and your time here. Um, because I view more. I take more of a look as a collective, and I have found that a lot of these institutions operate under like this banner of we're already finished, but we're just continuing to operate under this finished situation. Our teacher has died, or all the things that are there to be figured out about what we do have all been figured out, and now like you're supposed to be honored to be there. And I think that can be very good for your everyday average spiritualist, like somebody like the guy I just talked to. That'd be very helpful for him if he was able to go into a situation like that. But for me, I see more value in a collective of practitioners that are not necessarily building something new, but are open to collaborating about what is worthwhile to do to support each other in practicing together more deeply and effectively, and then also to benefit others, in the way that I'm sure that you've been benefited by your retreats and your practices.
Where do you see uh, what is the role of a head, a center for a community like that? Like I'm used to having a head monk or a resident Zen master, and I've got a lot from that because their experiences are so deep and so intense. How can a group of random people get benefit if there's no leading figure?
Well, I mean, so this is we're going to use we're able to use both, right? So we don't have to just use one or the other. But the leadership is in the space that's provided by our communal practice. So if it's let's say it's me and a bunch of hippies, that's going to be a big problem. But if it's me and you and a bunch of hippies, that's going to be a much more tenable situation, right? To create a context, to create an environment. But it's a learning process, and it's a community building process, and we let the leadership role being to be based in what we're able to give. So if somebody's good at doing certain things like cooking, or they're okay with cleaning, or they're good for working with animals or working with children or something like that, then they have a leadership role in that. But in a real spiritual community, that's why I think a lot of these places are kind of faux spiritual communities. The leadership is this form that people have to follow along with basically blindly. And in a community, in a situation like this, it's a form that we make use of, right? So like me sharing about the Dharma, or me facilitating meditation, or what have you, or me paying the bills, there's all kinds of different bills that have to be paid. It's not just about money. That's just a role that somebody takes to support the collective and support the community. So it's kind of an ongoing situation. And, it's something that we go into, and then because of a lack of rigidity, there's more accessibility, and there's also more opportunity for us to make mistakes, as well. I mean, we don't really recognize it. I feel the value of, maybe somebody like Stephen, who, you have the potential to murder. You have the potential to flip out. You have the potential to go absolutely insane because let's say you're not an arahat, right? Or you're not a fully realized Buddha. So I would have that potential too, right? But that practice and that experience and that training allows you to be in a position where that's very, very likely not going to happen. So that supports the community as well. There is a teacher, there is a leader, but it doesn't need to be more than a reference point for our collaborative work together. So let's say that I had all the resources and all the support to start out like the meditation center that I'd like to do here in Vietnam. It's not going to matter that I'm still going to be looking to teachers that I feel in my heart are more experienced than me. It's not about an ego game, because they don't want to deal with nonsense. And I also don't want to deal with nonsense. But I feel like they're more skillful at not having to deal with nonsense than I am. And also have a lot of practical skills in different ways. So it's like I wouldn't just reach out to my teacher to give me advice to meditation. I might reach out to my teacher because I would feel that he would know a place where I could go and stay. So it's a collaborative effort, and maybe it takes a little bit more willingness to start fresh than we would have to have if we went into some of these already established environments. But I think that's a positive rather than a negative.
I've never really thought about it like that, but I am going through a phase of understanding change is constant. And if you're in a rigid system where change is not constant, is this in line with principles that you follow?
So this is the end. This is the end AND principle. So it's never either or, and that's where we can get into consent or making a choice. So when we remove AND from all of our equations, it's a false sense of choice, because we have to choose what's right or bad, or we're drowning in what we feel is right or bad, and there's rights and bads all over the place. We feel when you have that end, that can be right and this can be right. Right? You can be right and you can be wrong. You can be a good leader and you can be a good student. So my skill and experience in being, feeling that I would be even equipped for a leadership role is all my experience and training in being in a student role. Like how I look to my teachers is it's a very pure way. It doesn't mean that I'm a very pure person in living up to that, and there's all kinds of defilements in that, but that's a master that I follow. That's a master that I believe in. That's a master that I have faith in. And I'm not saying to apply that in all circles, because that would just be ridiculous. Like, I'm a guru, I'm a master of everything. It's not like that. They're very skillful at doing what they're doing, and I can see that skillfulness applied to me in my life and to other people's lives, absolutely. So I don't need to think about what they're unskillful about or what their negative qualities are. And so that teacher-student dynamic, that they create that rigid form, is also useful because you know better than to think badly about the person who's ringing the bell or the person who's doing the chanting, because that's nonsense. And then you can also apply that to the other members of the community. So we see the positive qualities in each other, and then we collaborate and support each other with that basis of more positivity.
Okay, so you're mentioning positivity, and obviously there's negativity. How are you approaching duality in your own practice?
With a practical emphasis on applying the principles that have been transmitted to me by my teacher more effectively. So let's say, for example, we get to serious people around here with serious money. I don't know, who knows? So they want to make a meditation center, and they want to live at the meditation center and practice the meditation center. Well, for my ego, for myself, that's not ideal. That's not what my ego wants. My ego wants to smoke opium. My ego doesn't want to be dealing with a bunch of middle-aged people. Before I know it, I'll be a middle-aged person, right? Middle-aged men and women from this place and that place. There's no want for my ego to do that, right?
May I ask you,
Yeah.
how old are you now?
I'm 33.
Okay.
Yeah, but I got lucky because I started when I was 20. So that's one of the big factors as well, is that if you don't start when you're younger, you're going to need like a massive intervention to restructure. It's like some of the people that I've been talking with today, whether or not they have insight or this or that, it's a compulsive thinking that hasn't been checked. And because it's been going on for so long, and because they're kind of older, it's very difficult to say to them, hey, you might be totally wrong. And the practice is just to constantly say, hey, I might be totally wrong, and that's fine. And let me relieve myself of myself. It's very uncomfortable, and it gets more uncomfortable the more deeply you go into it, especially when we're working together or spending time with each other.
Why does letting go of, let's say, your ego uncomfortable?
Well, letting go of the ego isn't uncomfortable. It's that in the process of not propping up your ego, you're aware of more uncomfortableness. And all of this as well, and this is why the absurdity, you asked me about, the avant-garde. I don't even know what these words means. They sound like rich people words to me. But the absurdity, right, kind of expression, is because that is going to have to be at the core of the absurdity of your personal understanding and the absurdity of your personal position that doesn't confuse you or arouse you. Because when you actually start to live more in community in a practice space, maybe it's a good idea that it could be nice and flowery, but that's probably going to take a long time. It's probably going to be more uncomfortable. The ego is going to try to find a way out of that uncomfortableness, to the negative effect of all of the people around, to the negative effect of the environment that's around, right? And so we have to match that with something. And so I think it's valuable to match that with absurdity rather than formality. There's all kinds of different ways that you can do that, but I think for Westerners, that absurdity and that aggressive absurdity as well, that aggressive, toxic absurdity is much more valuable, because the other side of that is this hippie free love thing, where it's like, how long is it going to take before we have sex with each other, before we find somebody to have sex with? And it doesn't need to be that dark, because the uncomfortableness, the suffering is already dark enough, but it does need to be absurd. Otherwise, our individualistic, egoic values are constantly going to be competing with each other. So you can do that through formal rigidity, where, you look at the people and the clothes they're wearing, you say, well, my ego doesn't have a place here. And with this awareness of the absurdity that you're doing, you can also see that. And then you don't need to find your ego's position. You just have to make use of that opportunity to practice, to share, to give. And actually, we're restructuring each other in that as well, through our willingness to surrender and sacrifice. It's for Westerners, it's not going to work if we stack each other on top of each other. Now, if we stack each other on top of each other with monks and nuns in between from Myanmar, wherever, that might work a lot better. But if we're creating a meditation center, we're practicing together in, doing a practice like that, we have to have a place, small place, we can go in and rest and decompress and do whatever that stuff is. And we have to have ways that we can give back and take care and play together. And we also have to be okay with, for whatever reason, feeling that this person's dharma is valuable to us, and finding our way to fit into that role, which doesn't need to be as some kind of worshiper or anything like that. You know, it's a tool for you to practice. And so I see people as well, much less so than I see them as sources for money. I see them as tools to practice with. And that's what I feel I need, is I need more tool, not to use them, but to use them without attachment. You know, and a lot of these things are uncomfortable, but that's the way that life is, you know. It's quite difficult to see each other as something to make use of without attaching, because that attaching is where our ego, we want to make all these ego justifications for our relationships with other people, and it makes us act like fools. Now, relationships do happen, but if those aren't based in the practice, especially collective relationships, then it becomes very ridiculous very quickly. People are trying to social climb, people are trying to create relationships with other people, and we should try to not do that, actually.
So what should we be doing if not that?
Finding a way to give together, finding a way to use each other to practice together, and then through the effectiveness of that, internally and externally, finding more people to make use of for practice. You know, so it's social work. It's social work combined with the work of mindfulness and detachment.
What was your main practice when you are a monk? What was your practice? And that's, I'm talking in terms of meditation practice, or meditation practice. What was your practice?
Yeah. Well, this is the more essentially absurd and problematic aspect of the situation that also these monks and nuns and people lean onto, is the structure, so that they can keep you away from them, to keep from this apparent ability to intermingle the egos or to understand someone else's mind. We have to stop trying to understand other people's minds. And that is where the practice is, right? It's a living, breathing, active meditation retreat. So I'm only 33, you know, considering that I'm a very young man, especially to be in a position like this. But I'm very confident in this way of practice, and I want to continue practicing with other people like that. I want to continue learning with other people like that, but as a way of my main practice, which is to be aware of and not to attach to. So there's these 3 contemplation points to use, right? One is contemplating emptiness. So everything is absolutely empty. That's like the non-dual, kind of what I just said to you, you know, cut that off, because that's a problematic way of moving forward. But just, it's all empty. Let's all just look at the moon. It's all empty. And there's truth. That's a true practice. That's a real practice. The second is everything in the practical reality is true. And that's not really, we're not going to be able to contemplate that unless we're practically involved. So that's also a positive of these formal meditation institutes, because it becomes very practical. There's a schedule, there's a teacher, there's a time you meditate, there's roles and responsibilities for doing this and that. And so you contemplate that utter practicality, you just follow the schedule. And that the third is that those are equal. But it's never going to work out for the self. It's never going to work out for me or you. And so this constantly remembering truth, it now allows us to take this position of being an individual and engaging with the situation with detachment. It's not about us as real people finding a way to collectively agree and do something together. It's actually something to exploit, right? We're exploiting this opportunity. We're making use of it with detachment. But what goes along with that is a deeper morality, where actually you're using people with attachment. You're using things with attachment, but you're not trying to exploit them. You're trying to exploit any opportunity to practice more deeply and more seriously. And so that's why this, like making a meditation center and, you know, practicing together or joining a retreat with me, is simply a matter of a practice opportunity. And we're always coming back to that practice opportunity in everything and anything.
Do you think, well, it's not do you think, but is it valuable to think there's something called truth?
Just as valuable as thinking there's something called a toilet when you need to go pee. Equally
Yeah.
valuable. Equally valuable. Yeah.
So then the opposite of that would be there's some value in non-truth.
Yeah, 100%. And the value of non-truth is in its emptiness, just like the value of truth. See, this is where the win happens, right? The value of truth, the truth, is in its emptiness. The value of the non-truth is in its emptiness.
Can we not let go of both of those?
Ideally, we can when we're, let's say, in arahat or we're in deep meditation. But then you have to come back to the world. You have to come back to the practical experience. And when we're collaborating together, it's like my teacher is this Burmese monk, this Myanmar monk who has hundreds, thousands of followers, hundreds of meditation centers, and he has a, let's say, an inner circle of especially nuns, especially female monks that follow him very closely. And so these nuns are deeply, deeply trained in the teaching on not someone, not something, not somewhere. But they're very interested and passionate about following and working with this teacher and serving him and worshiping him. But instead of trying to figure out the subtleties of his egoic mind, they're taking refuge in him and in that environment as an object of truth, which is how we should apply our practice to anybody and everybody. But I said this to somebody recently, we're looking for something to be convinced about when the thing that in this kind of situation is that you would want to be convinced about is the process, the practice of unconvincing. So it's like, how do you convince somebody to be totally unconvinced?
Yeah. So is this where doubt comes into practice?
Yeah, this is a great, well, there's skeptical doubt, which is just our ego playing games. Skeptical doubt is just you're reifying your position of self and control and your ability to think clearly and pick and choose things, which is actually not true. I mean, I don't know, they hook you up to an AI VR machine, or now they're getting the brain link, the Neuralink. That's not where our actual discernment is. So our discernment is in spontaneous freedom from all notions, and then to operate from there. And so the value of that in Buddhism is that we're doing that concerned with that. And so that's what the Buddha taught, is to do that, because everybody can have a little awakening or a little recognition or whatever anybody calls it. Everybody can understand, don't think and meditate. But the way of the Buddhist practice is to give you a practical way to do that together with everything. But because you can't do that together with everything, you're sitting here and talking to me, and I'm sitting here and talking to you. And
Are
less
we
so
not
or more so, it's not really relevant for us as practitioners.
I mean, it's very interesting. Uh, Can, can I tell you a little bit about my recent journey? So I've been practicing a long time, and I decided, okay, there's a lot of practice behind what you've done. Now it's time to um, put it in practice, you could say. So I stopped meditating because I wanted to approach things and explore the space around me. And I've done that for a couple of years now. And I find myself coming back to my practice. And I feel that's a natural gravitational pull. Uh, I'm a firm believer in things like evolution and adaptation. And um, if I'm naturally being pulled to something, I think that's something I should explore. So, uh, so I've been in a space which is without meditation, and this has led me to Taoist ideas. How do you feel about the Taoist approach? Is it different?
It's just the problem of attachment to thoughts, any kinds of thoughts, especially thoughts that are about ourselves. That's why it's so important for Sangha or for social work to be at the core operating principle of what we're doing. Because as much as our thoughts are about ourselves and our understanding, we're just trapped. It's never going to work out. It's always going to be a solution that doesn't solve itself because it's only about ourself. So this
How
generosity is
can
very essential.
how can you I'm not saying progress, but how can you move forward um, without any guidance?
How can you
Like if I'm approaching my life and I'm adapting to situations that happen naturally and I'm doing my best, how is that something that is wrong, or how is that something that is misunderstood? I really can't say it very easily, but I feel like if I'm following my body and my base system, how can I be wrong with that? That's
Well, it's
just
funny. It's funny because that's exactly how you can't be right. So it's the practice of not following anything or anyone, especially ourselves, that allows us to go further down the path and actually be right or true.
well, if let's say I'm up on a mountain slope, I drop a rock, it falls down the mountain slope, bouncing. That rock is not making any decisions, is it? It's just falling and adapting to the landscape below it. So how is a rock falling down a mountainside wrong? It can't be wrong.
It can be as wrong as you can be. So if you can be
Yeah.
wrong, you are wrong. If you can't be wrong or right, then you're right. If you can
Yes, I
be
like that.
not meditating, then you are wrong. It's not true natural meditation. In true natural meditation, it's not possible for you to be meditating or not be meditating. And so specifically the kind of meditation that we're endeavoring to practice in any activity is a meditation of not someone, same as the rock. So the rock can't be wrong or right.
Yeah.
And actually there's nobody can be wrong or right. It's only these created somebodies that can be wrong or right.
So if we're not labeling these things as wrong or right, where do we go from there?
By accepting that we are labeling things as wrong as right. And that's why we need support. That's why we need help. And this is the problem with the modern non-duality scene, is that they're putting people in a position of, or rather they're giving people clemency when they don't deserve it. And they're teaching complacency. And it gets people, I mean, I just talked to a lot of people recently that I don't think they have any significant insight at all, but they're very convinced of their significant insight. And so there's a fundamental difference between being convinced of significant insight and being the rock falling down the mountain, so to speak, where you is illusory. So the thing is that we're giving this dualistic special value to our own experience and our own mind. Then by that premise, if you can do that, then you should also be able to give it to everyone's mind. And we have to kind of accept how undereducated and underinformed and undertrained we actually are in going in this journey. That's why we take refuge in the masters, because it's not just absolute emptiness. It's also absolute practicality, just like you're not shitting your pants, or you're not walking out into the street and becoming a saint, or whatever, whatever it would be. And we use both of those things. And actually, the third contemplation is that those things are equal. Those things are equally impermanent, unreliable, ungraspable. Because when you actually get into what these kind of people superimpose, this special non-dual view or perspective, for regular everyday people, if they were pushed into that space, it's a visceral space. It's not an intellectual space. So they would, I've done that. I've pushed myself into that space before, and it's a total dynamic where you don't have any separation between your body and mind and the body and minds of other people. And because your mindfulness and detachment or your morality hasn't been purified or worked on, you're totally in a crazy situation. But we're always actually in that situation, and that situation is always actually empty. So the basis of emptiness is the practical reality that we find ourselves in right now. So it's, do we want to go further down the path? Do we want to collaborate? Do we want to build something? Do we want to be a good person? Whatever you happen to want to do, it's your choice whether to do that or not. But creating this like ultimate disassociative non-dual cope is just superficial. There's not any real specialness in that. Just like there's not really any me or you here ultimately speaking to one another, and that there's not ultimately that either.
So how is it possible to navigate?
What do you mean?
How is it possible to navigate when you can't rely on anything?
The same way it's possible to navigate in space. There's an implication in it. It's the implication of somewhere else. So if you're not going anywhere else, if there is nowhere else, you can go anywhere. And the possibility is that the Buddha is we hate to get into religiosity, but from all the information that we have available, there's certainly not a comparable institution that's specifically about non-duality, specifically about the conversation that we're having here, 100% about that has done and existed to the present day in the way that Buddhism has. There's nothing comparable to that. It's certainly not fragmented Hinduist traditions and Advaita and Tony Parsons or whoever just pops up and gets a group of people to start talking like them. But it's not Western, and it's unusual and it's absurd, and we're not willing to accept how unusual or absurd our reality is or life is, and how vulnerable it is, because we haven't seen it, because we've been cloistered away from it. And then we're not willing to be challenged, and we're not willing to explore without a destination. But that's the very nature of exploration. So when the colonialists, the English people, and whoever it was, Christopher Columbus came over here, they weren't exploring anything. They were destroying everything that they came across. You know, that was what can I find to exploit? What can I find to take from? And this is the way that the ego operates, which is why these institutions of Buddhism are protective and secret, and not accessible, because these colonizers, our egos want to come and we want to take and we want to make it about us. And we want to give special importance to ourselves in that environment and in that situation, rather than just finding out how we can serve, how we can give. And instead, just giving, just meditating, just listening, or just walking away. You can do anything. You don't have to do one thing in particular. Because the you, right, is already not more real than the temporary cloud formation. And to call it temporary is kind of a grift. Because the moment that you point to, it's already dissolved and exploded 1 trillion times. That thing that you're pointing to is just an illusion, and the you that's pointing to it is also illusory. So like I said, it can be all three. It can be total emptiness, be totally practical, and it can be totally, both of them being equal. That the empty is equal to the solid. Space is equal to form. Suffering is equal to nibbana.
Can I ask you?
I'm just an investor, Dr. Rob.
Go ahead.
Good.
Go ahead.
All right, go ahead, Stephen. He's just an investor.
An investor in what?
It'd be called a donor, Motorola, not an investor. Okay, go ahead, Stephen.
No, I'm a donor. I want to donate to Rob. I've been watching him for a while.
Awesome.
Okay, well, just do it, okay? Don't talk about it, just do it. There's the PayPal, Motorola. Thank you very much.
Well, it's very interesting talking to you, and I'm glad I made the connection. Is this a regular thing now?
Well, it's a regular thing as much as people donate to make it a regular thing, right? So it's like if the teacher is willing to do meditation, to give teachings, right? To give a Dharma talk and spend time, particular period of time meditating with the group. Well, that's great. Say the teacher does it. But if nobody's showing up and donating, if nobody's showing up and practicing, the teacher doesn't need to do that. There's a lot of uncomfortable elements for the self and the ego that are going to have a lot to say about. It's just these complexes of equalness or superiority or inferiority. Western people like equalness. So when you present an idea or you present a persona that's based on equalness or the possibility of equalness, Western people love that. But if you present it based on inferiority, Western people love to be involved with that. If you present a position of superiority about anything that's not money, or me taking off my shirt and flexing my six-pack abs, everybody's got six-pack abs. They don't necessarily show up. Then people don't like it. Their egos don't like it, because we're supposed to be, as a Westerner, you're supposed to be in charge or deeply informed or whatever. And it's not going to be very nice to realize that actually you're not, that you're wrong. But that's what we do in meditation. I wrong. And any big forms of I that come up, like your thoughts or your dreams or your ideas, are then, eviscerated by your awareness of it and not attaching to it. So that's the practice. And it's also one of the really big things that's hard to fathom and to digest. It has nothing to do about that person's level. Because when you actually get to a higher level, right, a really high level, and now Stephen or me or anybody's coming up and talking to you, you can't fathom their mind. You can't receive their mind. You're not talking to them. You're talking to something that's been crafted to try to meet you where you are. You know, we can't climb up somebody else's ladder by wanting to climb up their ladder, and like totally and fully. And if you're perceptive enough, you can actually see, you know, the teacher doing that or whatever to that person. You're like, well, that person, you know, the teacher is totally speaking in a way that's not really, you know, how we imagine what they would say or how really they would be. But the thing is that the teacher isn't actually there. And how's your ego going to deal with that? You know, how's your ego going to deal with your bank account actually being empty? And that's true. It's just that we've created a system of illusion for merit. It's kind of a replacement for merit or for blessings. But your bank account being empty or not right now, or you being able to use it, is entirely up to blessings. It has nothing to do with what you've earned or what you're owed or what belongs to you, what you possess. And different cultures and different societies, they would have had different paradigms and different views about the nature of possession in relationship to the environment, in relationship to children, in relationship to items, were colonized and genocided by people like us, you know, by English people, by American people, systematically. You know, and then the Americas got taken out a certain way, but it really was that whole South American chain was full of these native peoples and these native cultures. And so now it's full of, you know, cartels and drugs and all this. So everything's operating in a way that you can't understand. And your unwillingness to accept that you can't understand this is exactly what keeps you from being a good practitioner, a good donor, a good volunteer, a good meditator, all that stuff. Because you think you have a right to understand. And that's what a lot of these non-duality teachers think too. It's just that they cover it up in a certain performative language. So Stephen, if you came across the right non-duality teacher, they would do like a mutual convincing hypnosis with you. They'd teach you the language. And then I can see it right now. Stephen, the non-duality guy, and he's got his YouTube channel. And now he's trying to mutually hypnotize people that they get it. I get it. You get it. We get it. We all get it. Let's all laugh. Or whatever we might do. It's just nonsense. And it's not a system to make merits. And that's what we need. We need a system to do more and more good deeds with mindfulness and detachment, removing all limiters to that. You know, removing the limiter of someone, some place, some time, but we use some place, some time, some situation to enact that principle or that practice. You know, it's a practice methodology is what it is. Combined with the social work or the needs of others and how that helps us leverage our own deeper practice of generosity, of having a higher standard of morality. Because think about it, if you're alone, if you're practicing alone, it doesn't really matter how much to the dark side of the moon you go to get some pleasure or to build up your ego, then, or, you know, alcohol or whatever. The next day you're hungover. Well, there's no reason for you not to be hungover. Whereas if there's a schedule or if there's a community that holds you to a certain standard, right? And that's also what I'm here to do. I'm here to lift up people's standards and hold them to a certain standard if I can. Then people are going to notice it. And you're going to feel, you know, wow, I'd like to do better. So the Sangha is very important. The community is very important. But for many of us, we're not in a position to have a co-led Dhamma talk. We're in the position to be a donor, to be a volunteer, to be a serious practitioner, and to share our experience, you know. But that's humbling to be in that position. And we don't want to be humbled. We want our ego to be aggrandized. You get it, don't you? You know, it doesn't matter if you get it. You're not there. It's just you is not even that good of an idea. You separate from a collective, like an ingrained, integrative collective, is an insane idea. Now, there's some insane yous that are separated from a practical collective, and they're a part of a universal collective. Hermits, that maybe they've been alive for 200 years. Who knows? They know to stay away from people like you and people, I hope not people like me, but people like us, certainly, right? Certainly. And so we're not a part of a practical collective, and yet we're still using this word you, and it doesn't really make any sense. So we have to accept that. We have to accept that you doesn't really make sense outside of community, but we're still using it. And we're becoming insane in doing that.
Isn't it a practical human trait to have a you?
Says who? The Queen of England?
Says every normal individual on the planet that has a sense of you. I mean, we're talking the majority of humans have a sense of self, a strong sense of self. Some of them may be distorted. Almost certainly a massive amount of them have been manipulated. But the sense of self seems universal. How can you say that there's no you?
Well, I can't say there's no you. That wouldn't make any sense. Because if I have a me, then certainly you have a you. But we're going back to as well to the colonization, the genocide, the moral grandstanding of our culture and our society that's totally baseless, especially for somebody from England. I mean, what a morally corrupt society at its very root, at its very core, that kept doing their work as long as they possibly could, their colonization and their genocide. It's a broken proposition from the start, from the beginning. You have to superimpose that there could be someone separate from a collective. It's like religious fanaticism. It's like Christianity or something, that there's a separate soul that either goes to heaven or to hell. There's no individual without the collective. There's no collective without the environment. There's no environment without space. So what we're doing here is we're bringing ourselves into space and allowing that self to dissolve. But we can't, because we can't fully do that, we have to dilute the self in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and in the community of practice. But we have so much skeptical doubt that it's kind of a hopeless journey. It's one of the factors, it's one of the hindrances, right? This skeptical doubt. You have to take responsibility for what you're doing right now and stop offshooting and offshore drilling that responsibility for someone else. To take responsibility for you or why you're here. Like, I was manipulated into being here. I don't even agree with this. I don't even know what this is. Well, that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. So it becomes a me or a we problem when we get involved, when we are a donor, when we are a volunteer, when we're a practitioner. And if this isn't a suitable practice place for people, then, by all means, go and find a place that is. If this isn't a suitable place to make donations or to offer to serve, then find a place that is. If this isn't a place to volunteer, then find a place that is, because this is the path that Buddhism has set out. If you don't think that there's wisdom and compassion here, then, please go on your way. But discursive thought is never going to reach the subtle. You can't imagine how subtle this system of education is. You'd be looking at the words, and that's why people go to Taoism and certain teachers that's why people go to non-duality, because it makes it very stupid, which is not a good word, which is an ableistic word, but it makes it very vapid and shallow and it's processed food is what it is. And easily to consume and believe in. And then people are content with their belief. Their self has a belief now. I am one. Look at me. Look at me, everybody. I am one. Not two, just one. It's better to say just this. Take the numbers out of it.
Okay, well, thanks for talking with me, Rob. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Stephen.
Best of luck with your journey, and you're trying to make a retreat center. Is that right?
Not really, but that's kind of the story that we're sharing with people. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm trying to get the hell out of Dodge is what I'm trying to do. And this would seem to be a good way to do that. So, well
done.
a good way to not allow my ego to be in charge of this body and mind, which is very good. So, we'll see what happens. A lot of people many people, more and more people, they want to come and stay here. They want to come and practice here in Vietnam. They want to receive deeper teachings and deeper support from me. So we want to, that's the main thing. We want to see about having an environment in the next year, in the next few months, where it will be accessible for people to come and practice and retreat and get involved. But it's a very selfless mission. It's a very selfless work that I'm doing here. No offense to anybody here, but it's at least the way that things stand. You're probably not my type yet. I'm willing to share my time, my energy, my body, my mind, my experience, my very valuable experience, my very insider information about Buddhism, about Zen, about non-duality, without expecting anything from anybody, to a very high degree. So let's get some W's in the chat. Let's get some applaud for Dr. Rob, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
So go ahead, Robin, joining us here, and Andrew's also in the Zoom meeting. And anybody who's watching along at home, you're welcome to join the Zoom meeting and take a look into our Sangha here. But that's the funny thing, right? That tolerance and that willingness and that abrasiveness, that feeling of abrasiveness, that is the path. That is nibbana, if you want to look at it that way. And the more that you're willing to chew on that sandpaper, the better your life is going to be. And if it's really better, then it's not just going to be about you, but it's about giving that betterness outwards. Because in our practice of eating that abrasiveness, we see to not seek outwards. Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, greetings. Hi, Dr. Rob. Hi, Stephen and Andrew and everyone in chat. Just comment about the chewing the sandpaper and abrasiveness. I know when I first started watching your channel, Dr. Rob, the kind of abrasiveness of just very simple but powerful statements like "stop thinking." I found very confronting, and you think, why is he being so aggressive, and all these sorts of things. But now you've said it in use that phrase, chewing on some sandpaper, that I guess is a good description for how I felt. Like I said, when I first started watching your channel and hearing you say things like that, because that's one of the things I'm trying to incorporate into my practice in my daily life. Outside of meditation, is just to stop thinking. And the other one that really sticks with me that you say quite often is restart and refresh. I can't tell you how helpful that has been from literally from moment to moment, because we can be our own worst enemy and doom scrolling our own minds all the time, and this constant chatter and the compulsive thinking that you were talking about. So just literally moment from moment, restart, refresh, and stop thinking so much, because I'm one of these people that classically overthinks everything, and have done most of my life. So yeah, I just wanted to put that in there because chewing the sandpaper. Gee whiz, sometimes some of the things you say are I think the general public would think are quite abrasive, but they're immensely powerful. I do have a question about non-duality, because through my education, which is mainly about around language, you know, language and meaning we're taught is based on binary. We define something by what it's not. Something's white because it's not black, or something's sweet because it's not sour, right? Or where you get the idea. And just to think about non-duality, really, I struggle with it a lot, because through my work now, I'm really focused on freedom. And there was something I heard you say a little while ago, and I can't quite get my mind around it. If maybe you can explain it, I'm not sure, but if you're thinking about freedom, obviously the binary of that not being free. And if you're so concerned and thinking about being free all the time, then actually you are attached to not being free. And there you go. Yeah. 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 That's it. And as far as non-duality, I dare not look on the internet for, you know, some person that I've never heard of to give me an explanation of it, because quite frankly, you've just expressed, don't think, stop thinking about it. And you never know who you're going to come across on the internet talking about things like that. I'm just assuming it's something that I shouldn't give too much too much thought to, Dr. Rob. Mhm. Mhm. Mm.
Oops.
Yes.
Sorry for all the people on YouTube. You couldn't hear me there.
Yes. I'm going to have to go and feed my guinea pigs, but thank you very much, Dr. Rob. And yeah,
Okay. Blessings, love, and light. Take care.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew. So how have things been going since we last talked? What's the update? Have you had a shift, a great shift?
Who's to say? Um, I feel like I'd know if I did, so I guess not. Or yeah. Yeah, I'm just doing the same. Yeah, no. There's not been a shift. Same thing. I'm just coming in. Oh, how can I appear? Let me overthink about all this and that.
You may very well be in a situation where that's, necessary or important. That's the culture, that's the framework that you're in. So if you don't do that, people are going to think you're a retard. They're going to bother
Mm.
you. What happened to you? What's going on? So if you try to shift in that way, it's definitely going to be a problem. If you try to add something that's going to help you resolve and remove a little bit, that's going to be better. So 5 precepts, then you're still thinking about what you're doing and who you are and stuff, but people are saying, why aren't you ripping on the dab rig? Because I'm getting more involved in my Buddhist practice. So the beginning is, towards the beginning, it's really, it's not fun. Not fun at all. Yeah.
Although, yeah, I don't know. I feel like so far the experience with meditation has been not always like a self-soothing one, but that often seems to be, I suppose, the bit. It's often like I'll, not until I get totally spun up to the point of, wow, I'm like gripping the steering wheel real hard, will I often, I guess, focus on it. There's a pattern of, wow, things are difficult. I know this teacher's helped me. I'll punch in like Eckhart Tolle, Ajahn Brahm, whatever, and just whatever mind crap I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
And it tends to, calm things down to listen. And that's kind of, I guess, where it's at the moment.
Well, that's what because most people don't want, they're not willing to take a big risk, so they're not going to make the big money, right? And it can happen in pockets. It happens small times, big times, but have you used Instagram?
Yeah.
Maybe you've seen some of these Instagram reels about getting the boys together, going down to Bali and struggling until we reach $100,000 a month, each one of us, right? Something along the lines of that. So it's the same. It's the same in what we actually have to do in our spiritual path. We have to do something like that. We have to come into a space, continuous practice, serious practice. Imagine if you were in this little apartment with me and you had to sit there and you didn't really have anywhere to go while I, went from this. Maybe this is the first 6 hours of the live stream, and then the next 4 hours are going to be Dr. Rob drunk and screaming at every single person he comes across, And so now you're there for that full process. That's where we get a bigger reward, right? So you part of what you do is you put yourself out there into these situations where you're not going to have any choice but to sacrifice yourself and your ego's control dynamics, and that's when the ego, we call it an animal. So this guy from Hillside Hermitage, Ajahn Yanamoli, he calls it the animal. And you need to watch that animal and not allow it to do freely and to run freely. Right, so the animal that wants to go to the beers, the animal that wants the late night snacks, certainly the animal that wants to rip dabs and do things like that. We can still be involved in that process. We can be involved in active addiction or whatever it is actively, and we can still like it and love it and want more of it and know that that's probably incorrect, or better yet, that is incorrect. And now that activity becomes a practice point before, during, and after. And so whether or not there is regret there can still be self-reflective awareness there before, during, and after with whatever that activity is. Some people have really big issues with masturbation. I've had that before in the past as well. And you just have to turn it into a practice point. And that thing is still happening. You're still doing that thing. Luckily, you're not hurting anybody, hopefully, by doing it, whatever it is. But it will fall off when it's ready to fall off. This is a process that takes a lot of time. That's why it's so ridiculous. People come in, they're looking for answers. I've got your answer right here, buddy. Fuck you, pay me. Where's my money? That's my answer, right? But you're supposed to do that a little bit more secretly with advertisements and manipulations and funny hats and things like that. So you've already told those people, fuck you, pay me, and now you're talking to them afterwards, which, at least somebody makes some money from it. But with just the intention of helping people, you get a lot more reach and a lot more accessibility, and there's a freedom in what's going on that I think people can feel, but it is uncomfortable. It's like opening up the unknown, allowing the unknown to be alive, allowing unknowing to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I'm both approaching from a space of frankly selfishness and also wanting to know. Like, oh yeah, give me this teacher, give me that teacher, somebody else.
Yeah. And
It
that's not particularly valuable. That's
yeah.
not a very skillful modem. That's why most of the people that you'll see who are going towards spirituality, they're traumatized people. They're people who've dealt with mental health issues. They're people who've dealt with social health issues. There's people who maybe are not economic health issues, and so they're looking for an out. And if you're doing that, you want to find the easiest thing that you can to get out. And then people fall into those circles. There's some better people like Joe Dispenza, somebody like Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you know him, but
It rings a bell.
you could look into his work, and they're selling retreats, and they're very powerful, big orators. And it's something we don't really know a lot about, which is the spontaneousness of the mind. And as long as we're open and receptive, which is a part of the process as well, with like donating, like people would get Dharma talks from the Buddha because people were in a process of donating to the Buddha. So they'd invite this monk, or they go to them and they bring these things and make an offering. They bow, they pray, and then they say, hey, can you help me with this? Can you give me advice with this? Because it's like a process of opening themselves. So as much as we're open, we're very able to have big shifts in our understanding or what we're intending to do, big shifts in the world. And that's always been true. And it's still true. That's why you find there's so many people with a speakerphone or a blowhorn trying to get somebody to listen to them, because that is how it works. That's how advertisement works. We are listening. We are aware. And there is an effect from what we see and hear and experience. Our minds are not localized, and we're not in control of our minds. That's why for me, I don't have to think about, I don't have to worry about how I'm appearing, mostly in public or something like that. Because it's just not, there's not a mind here that needs to be protected or presented in a certain way. Especially if, that's why it's difficult to maybe make friends or bring random people in, because I'm going to bring them into that environment. And then if they want to talk with me, I'm going to talk with them about things that are maybe not going to be something that they're ready to hear. Too deep, too real, too subtle. Because if you can communicate it to them and they can understand it, but their egos are not ready to understand it, who knows what's going to happen? But yourself, in terms of the self that you're putting out there, is just already. But other people have picked up and made little stories or something, and now you have to deal with that. That's not a good idea. You know, that's not healthy for you, especially when you're dealing with something like that. When we go to a meditation center, a meditation environment, you get something totally different way of being with one another and creating social relationships. It's all based on kindness or generosity. It's not based on what I thought about you and how you appeared and talking about these superficial nonsense topics that don't really mean anything to anybody. It's like we'll be actively trying to distract each other because we're actively trying to distract ourselves. And when you're in a position of being like a teacher or facilitator, maybe somebody who's more advanced, you know, you may have to be in like this, you know, that you're trying to manage someone else's mind that's in your space. You're dealing with their Thich Nhat Hanh called it the NST, you know, like PBS radio, but nonstop thinking radio. And it's not, you don't have to manage that, but you may be drawn to do that because you have some kind of egoic relationship with them. But it's actually more so that it's just kind of annoying. So like with my wife, with Hung, you know, I don't know if she's got a radio going on in there or not, but we're never like annoying each other or something. You know, there's an openness, there's a quietness, there's a refuge in the space that has nothing to do with like us thinking similar things of what's going on at all. So it's like we try to cover up awkwardness by creating that. It's why people love political rallies and they love like different parasocial relationships with music creators or stuff, because they don't have to think about anything because they're all thinking, we love them, we love that person, or we'll do the work, you know. But it's better if there's actually nothing in between anybody there. And that if you can feel that you are picking up on that things in between people there, that's your opportunity to meditate or to serve. You know, if you have a group of people that are totally just, not totally, but are really activated and aware and not controlled by previous thoughts or the current thoughts or the next thoughts, you can go around and do basically anything. You're unlimited, you're unchained, you know. But for most people, once they get into a more real situation like that, their minds are going to destabilize, and they know that intuitively, so they avoid those situations, right? They're hiding from the potential expression of how unstable and confused and problematic they are. So it's not just that they're choosing to not like come here or choosing to not go to that meditation center. Their processes are working to say that is dangerous. That's dangerous for me. I'll be exposed. So we have to transition that to being open to expose me. Oh, devas, oh, spirits, please expose me. Oh, everyone, expose me. And so it's like exposing ourselves to awareness. It helps a lot with that.
Yeah, and it feels very easy to, there's like a sense of wanting to take advantage, to use it, to use like the helpfulness of awareness to improve my life. um And, you know, I don't know if that's quite the best thing.
Well, this is where the shift happens. That awareness is the improvement. That's the best improvement you can give, is a deeper, clearer, more present awareness.
And when I'm not in that, it feels like the sense of I need to chase that or move towards that in a way removes me from it.
No, this is a problem. The awareness is not owned. It's a process of giving. It's like a flowing. So you need to step into the flow of that. But unless you're in this way of giving, then you can't step into that flow. That's why we're always in this position of contracting and taking and conniving and scheming and thinking. So we can't step into the flow. So starting to practice some generosity, some social service, some volunteering, doing good deeds, you know, cleaning mom and dad's toilet or whatever it would be. Cleaning can be your toilet, cleaning up as a way of giving. But then we stand up, we open out, we give out. It's not about grasping and understanding. You can't really understand the Dharma that way, which is why it's more difficult nowadays for people to receive the Dharma or to understand it. Anyways, if you did understand it, you'd probably practice silence. You probably wouldn't have anything to say, you know? But if you did, you couldn't, because of how perpetuated you are in grasping and avoiding, because of the social media and the access to technology that is not informed by wisdom or compassion, doesn't value that. It's like in that grasping, you're blocking the flow of forgiveness, healing, allowing, transformation, clarity, brilliance. And then these schizophrenic thoughts that we have that happen on different levels are important because the flow is blocked up by our grasping and attachment. If you can release that grasping and attachment, and really that ignorance and attachment, which is that knowing without grasping and knowing without knowing, then it's nothing has some kind of significant importance, certainly not unnecessarily. Nothing needs to have significant importance unless we choose for it to have significant importance. And so if we are choosing for something to be significantly important, we should take responsibility for that in the moment, in the now. You know, and out of that now, that little tiny sliver of whatever now is, expanding that locally to our current context and our current brim of the hat of experience of what's going on, and in that way looking at our own minds. What do you think is happening right now? But looking at that as this arbiter of truth that's not based in an identity with all these other thoughts or thoughts in general. What is happening right now? What is this? So that's a contemplation, and the answer saying like, you know, saying potato, tomato or something, that can be good because you know how to cut through that perpetuation of delusion or cut through that suffering and turn that suffering into nibbana, or realize that suffering as nibbana, as freedom.
And that's a generous thing to do.
Yes, that's the most generous thing to do. But because we cannot do that, we have to practice other kinds of generosity. You know, volunteering, doing good deeds, digging holes. It's like you want to get a job. You get a job as a carpenter or something like that. You want to be a carpenter, and also you need money. So now you go and you apply as a carpenter's apprentice or whatever. Well, they've got you digging holes because that's all you know how to do. I'm not here to teach you how to be a carpenter. I'm here to make money. Dig that hole. But we don't we think it should work another way, which is why the trades are kind of falling apart in a place like America. It's all, immigrants and Mexicans and things that do the trades mostly. And it's a disaster. And if you want to get more training, because we don't know how to use we don't have any connection to our heart or our gut at all, basically. We're cut off at the head. As Westerners, many of us, we've been cut off at the head. All we know how to do is think. And we don't know how to think particularly well with the mental technology that we have. And so we're unconsciously operating from our heart and from our gut, but all of that's unconscious, and we're just thinking up some way that this is something that makes us superior or important or whatever. Or neutral, or like vague, or shallow, because we don't have any connection to the rest of our body, especially our anus as well. Our anus is constantly clenching, but we're not aware enough to notice that. So you have this unconscious tension and contraction in the body. You need to relax that. You need to relax your anus, everybody. It's this confusion. It's seeing in reverse, where it's like, I'm here and I'm trying to get something from, or I'm trying to do something with the people who are here. And that makes them wear a little top hat on their head, right? Oh, how honored I am that this guy wants to come to me and wants to be involved with me somehow. When in actuality, it's a 0 point. I do this live stream. I'm not doing this live stream to be with anybody. Whereas every time that people come to join this live stream, they're coming to be with me. 100%. And there's other elements that allow them to justify that or to go through that process, like having the comments on, or, me performing in a certain way. So what does that mean? Well, think about it. But don't socialize your thinking. Don't think in this way of you a part of this like clone group of yourself that likes hovering over your shoulder. Yeah. Actually, think about it for yourself in a new way, in a fresh way.
Yeah. I was about to say I don't know, something that didn't feel fresh, I guess. But I don't know. But that's just more thoughts. But just generosity, yeah. For me, it's flipped on its head. Somebody, as you said, puts the hat on. Like a certain amount of people pleasing has been like very habitually it's formed as a habit. And I would often, it would feel like, oh, I'm being generous, helping to like soothe this person that evidently needs it. But it's kind of just feeding into things that aren't that ultimately.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with it. And so from a primal point, for a primary point, this has to do with childism. Because children are taught to respect adults. That's nonsense. Why should children respect adults? Because they could fuck you up because they're bigger than you? That's not a very deep way to think about things, right? So that's a fundamental part of what's ingrained to us, to respect adults and also to be dominated by adults. That's the way that the world should be, and that's the way that we should operate. But so this generosity, is generosity concerned? I know nobody wants to hear it. Trust me, nobody wants to hear it as much as me. I'm the one who doesn't want to hear it the most of all. We do generosity concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. It's an inconvenient truth, but it changes the dynamics of what we're doing. Okay, we're volunteering at the animal shelter. Well, that's good. Right? But here's also the drawing line. How closely connected to yourself or to your ego is this generosity? If it's right up on line with your ego, well then be careful, because that's a tricky snake. And instead of you giving the snake away or giving your ego away, you might just be wrapping your snake around itself, or the snake eating itself. Look, I'm doing generosity. Look at me. Look at how profound I am. Look at how important I am. Look at how many people want to listen to me, or whatever. It takes all kinds of different forms. When we're doing generosity concerned with the animal shelter, well, I'm not a dog and I don't know these people, and I'm not really getting anything back in particular from this. It's constant feedback, so okay, it's a little bit more removed. Now we're talking about doing generosity concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, which is about wisdom and compassion, which is about becoming free from ourself. I mean, there's all these haughty-tooty people out there that think they're these spiritual dynamos or intellectual dynamos talking about, ha, 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 you think Buddhism has something to offer. You think, including religion in this is somehow meaningful. It's very tricky. And we need support structures. We need community structures. That's why I talked to like 3 or 4 people this morning, people who, claim to be at the end of the path or enlightened. And, they didn't sound that enlightened to me, certainly not by the standard that I've come to hold people to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was listening to, I think,
So
one
it's
of them.
very, very tricky. And that's why we... and then the more that you're open to that, you can learn about what the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha is. And you can make it into something that's always available. It's not that you necessarily need to go to a Buddhist temple or meet some monks or do a meditation retreat, but those things are good too. It's an institution. We don't have to do it that way, but practically that's an important thing to be aware of until we have a challenge for that. We can challenge that. But, if you don't have any experience of that, then it's difficult to challenge that. And if what we're talking about or what we're interested in has best been epitomized and represented and institutionalized by this thing called Buddhism, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, then why would we be so against looking into that and trying to have a deeper understanding of that to support what we're interested in? So we've got to become cross-cultural. And it helps us decentralize ourselves in our experience.
Yeah, and right now it's like oh, I should be helpful in some way. It would be generous of me to say something to you so
That's just
that...
insanity. That's exactly what you got to let go of. That is absolute, pure American ego insanity. It's just fake relationships. It's fake interpersonal dynamics. It's total nonsense. It's totally fake. That's not where generosity is. Our thoughts and prayers. You can shove your thoughts and prayers up your ass. How about a couple $100 or equivalent? And so when you're in that position as well, this is what we do. Cross our legs, sit up straight, grit your teeth, and hold your breath. Show that dog who's boss. In bits and pieces here and there, and then you do it naturally.
And hold your breath?
You want to, because we're not necessarily punishing the dog, but we're kind of smothering it with attention. And a part of that is hold the breath a little bit to get a little bit of a spontaneous shift. Because in meditation, the moment you start breathing is the moment you start thinking and start confusing. So if you start your meditation, I hold my breath all the time, just kind of automatically. Hold your breath and grit your teeth and close your eyes and be still. The whole body and mind is still, and that's functionally what you're attempting to practice. But then you do have to breathe as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's these parts of our mind that we don't like and don't accept. And so the meditation allows those parts of our minds to kind of come out and be received. We're just receiving everything when we meditate, but we're also not adding anything. And just let the breath flow out, still being still. And then breathing with that silent mind. And your breath, the flow of the breath, how you're breathing, it's like how you're holding the leash on the dog of the barking mind. So you need to experiment with how you hold it so that dog will shut up. So try to look at your eyes with your eyes closed and look into that darkness. Look at that field of darkness or field of non-seeing. And just breathing and looking at that. That absence of anything to be seen. Just watch it. Watch that vision. Watch that experience of seeing nothing. Or that black space without things. Yeah, so it's functionally that, and you just need to learn to relax in that and relax the trying. And then the struggle is going to come from the mind rather than the trying. And then you have to kind of sit there and endure. And it's a rinse and repeat process. So you just keep coming back to it, but it's very, very difficult to do on our own. You know, it's something that's a lot easier to do with Sangha. And when you come and, join and practice with our group and what we're doing here, then that's a great excuse. That's a great reason to meditate. But it's a lot of that, and just doing that. And then doing that at all times, instead of thinking. And sometimes it's interesting because the other day I was feeling really tired and kind of restless and just really tired and unpleasant. And then I went for a little bit of a walk, and a few moments later, I had very good meditation. So it's not actually about if you feel good or you feel bad doing it, it's more about practicing it, the silent mind, and then enduring the pain. Because the pain, whether it's coming from the mind or the body, is connected, but the pain is going to bring out the reactivity that causes suffering, the avoidance mechanism. And then you're going to be buffering down that avoidance mechanism, which is causing suffering because you're going to be enduring it, not reacting to it. And once you are more easily able, I think I'm not even supposed to tell you this stuff or to tell people this stuff, but the more easily able you are to feel that deep unsatisfactoriness and that deep suffering, the more empowered the other parts of your mind are going to be. And the more that those extreme coping mechanisms are going to lose importance. I've experienced that. But it takes time as well. That's why you don't see so much spiritual, because maybe the cat's kind of out of the bag and people realize how much time it takes and energy it takes to get the kind of shifts that they would like to, especially when they're being compared with like more experienced practitioners. And who wants to invest in all that? Who wants to be getting on a train ride to a destination that's years away, if it ever comes? That's also why the community is very important, because we have to find some way, some process to keep us engaged and involved with this that's not about my ego wants to be more spiritual or more enlightened or whatever. Because that's not going to get you through the dark times. It's not going to get you through the doubt. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just difficult. Yeah. It's like a whole, I mean, you're kind of directing it. There's a whole circus that is kind of needed to. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you don't have that circus, the circus is also what you're dealing with. So that's why I don't like this non-duality stuff, because it's, just because we recognize our internal capacity to view things in a particular way, it doesn't mean that the world is not a circus and that magically our egos are not a circus anymore. It's just that now we've covered it up with this veil of disassociation and an unwillingness to learn more, an unwillingness to be challenged. And we create this new ultimate position that was before about me and is now about there is no me. I'll show you me. If Angelo Delulu comes here, I'll show him me. I've already showed him me. And that's the other thing. There's such a lack of subtlety. And that's why we need all of this engagement. We need this environment. We need all these different dynamics. We need all these principles and practices, because it's a joy, because, we're already here. So we already don't have that much better of something to do. So why don't we make it quite enriched, and interesting and dynamic and accessible and open? And we can't just sit here and say nothing, nothing, nothing. That's a little bit boring, a little bit contrived, a little bit uninspired. And that's another element that we're going to need to actually have a deep dynamic, is you can't just sit there and meditate. You have to have these impassioned experiences where you're viscerally, dynamically, excitingly, passionately going into the mind or going into the practice to the point where you don't care if you live or die.
Is there a discernment there with like having that excitement and because I've had moments of like, I guess you could call it excitement, of like there was a point where it was very just presence was kind of demanded out of me. It was a bit of a dire situation for a friend.
Yeah.
And I could feel myself like literally, like I was physically shuddering as I was like speaking like kind of just about similar things, I suppose. And it, like, there's the spontaneity there with excitement, but sometimes other things seem to portray themselves as like my highest excitement or things like that. And it's not. And it's difficult to discern between the two.
You don't have to. You don't have to discern. And that's how your discernment will grow. Your attachment to discernment is just ego. It's just a made up pretend thing. But we have because we haven't gone through that process, we believe in real things. It's impossible for real things to exist already, always, all the time, anyways. And it's not the best way, but we can try to look at where, because you can go and harass all the Walmart employees as well. You know, you don't get it. It doesn't work like that. You know, it's a different dynamic. It's a different energy. But that's also empty. So it's not that we ever find a position for us to be on or stand on to look at somebody else's position. That's not what it's about. It's positionless giving according to the best of our abilities and our faculties. And giving connected with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha is giving connected with detachment. So you give, you detach. You help, you detach. That's right. Doing good things does not make us righteous. Detachment makes us righteous.
You said detachment makes us righteous.
Detachment makes us right.
Oh.
But there's no you in a script to be right. It's detachment is rightness. Attachment is wrongness. If you're detached from a dream, you know it is a dream. If you're attached to a dream, you don't know it is a dream. So that's why it's wrong. As long as you know that it's a dream, you can operate rightly. You can operate freely. If you take this to the dark side, well, you'll get what goes along with that. It's like you say, okay, well, I'll apply that to hurting people, or I'll apply that to drinking alcohol, or I'll apply that to my heroin usage. Well, go ahead. You'll get the side effects from that. So we can't just deny cause and effect. But we say an enlightened person is not free from cause and effect. They're aware of it. It's just like money. It becomes something just like money. It's a wealth. It's a wealth in the mind. A wealth of detachment. Which is a wealth of contentment, which is a wealth of peace.
There was I think it might have just been yesterday, one of the monasteries or something with like, it's like 5 plums on a tree or something like that. I followed them after seeing you rebroadcast one of the talks, and I assume the master, I don't know, was making like a point. He was clearly making a point, but he was like conflating loving and like attaching, and was almost like, oh well, in this school of like Buddhism, we don't like do the whole, oh, what kind of person are you? Detached? I'm detached from you. I'm not gonna I'm not caught up in the attachment of loving you. I'm not, and as if it like comes out of like a fear of being attached.
It's just the American nightmare. It's the American nightmare where the best chance you're ever going to get is to fall in love at a coffee shop with some slut. And so that's not the way that we live in the Buddhist world, the Buddhist community. There are teachers, there are elders, there are monks, there are nuns, there are Vipassana masters, there are Samatha masters. There's a collective community ecosystem with a lot of different peoples and a lot of different roles. And it's not that one is better than the other, but the lack of integration, the lack of awareness. So instead of having movies about falling in love, we could have a movie about finding our Dharma teacher and then doing our best to please him and serve him and benefit him and to support his works. You know, but if we try to just mix and mingle all these dynamics, it's just, you know, you're using things that need to be thrown out to try and create a foundation for what you want to build upon. You know, and the worst thing is now you're at a Taco Bell trying to tell your high school friends that everything is unified, everything is one. Don't you see? Don't you get it? Which is just nonsense. It has nothing to do with them. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you and a story. And that's the practice of meditation as well, is the practice of the de-storification. Yes, actually, the de-storification of our consciousness, our awareness, our mindfulness. You know, but that by itself isn't going to work. We actually have to purify with the light of wisdom our store consciousness, our alaya consciousness, our eighth consciousness, so that all of that reactivity, all of that bias is blown out, purified by the light of wisdom. And the other side of wisdom is compassion. Right? So wisdom is a sword, compassion is a flower. They go together. There's not really any compassion without wisdom. If you try to explain smart things to stupid people, you might be surprised the next time you look in the mirror with clear eyes. So I might need to go and look in the mirror pretty soon. With all the people that are here, who knows what kind of people they are. So our job in this kind of situation is very difficult. Our job is to be a donor. Our job is to be a volunteer. Our job is to be a practitioner. We're not getting into bed with the teacher, metaphorically, allegorically. We're probably not going to be the teacher's friend, you know. And the worst thing we can do is go around and, you know, please pretend to be my friend or something like that. It's your psychosis. It's your worst nightmare. That's what it is. That's what we're looking for. That's where we're working towards. And so in working towards our worst nightmare, we want to have a lot of merits. We want to have a lot of good deeds and good activities that are interfused with mindfulness and detachment, which generosity and precepts and meditation and mindfulness. Right? It's like you're bringing yourself. You're basically bringing yourself to the point where the fight or flight response is not turning off. And then you have to learn, you're learning how to turn that off permanently. The fact that you want to live, you don't want to die, you're in danger. When your our intellectual capacity, right, the brain capacity, mind capacity, bring us to that realization, to that actual truth that we are always in danger. That, you know, a bear doesn't know that it might have a heart attack. A bear doesn't recognize that it's subject to birth and death at any time. But you do. You have that technology. And so that technology, taken as far as it can be, is you are doomed, sir. Your life is doomed, sir. And so that's why the Buddha, he would talk, I mean, they didn't really have, childism wasn't on the agenda at that time, but he would talk about Patujanas. So there's these two classes of people, Patujanas and Aryas. And so the Patujanas he compared with children that were not aware of the dangers of the world, not aware of the realities of the human condition. Maybe it would be the need to work, the need to provide for yourself, the need to do all these very difficult things to get by. And the Aryas are these people who realize that the house is on fire. So even for those little children, saints or sinners, whatever they may be, those children very often do not realize that their house is on fire. So this is something you have to practically realize first, and then you can, kind of like what I've done, psychosomatically presenting that and practicing with that and sharing with that. But your position is only special because of the causes and conditions that allow it to be. You see what I'm saying? Your egoic position is authoritative or valuable or meaningful because of causes and conditions, not because of you. So it doesn't matter how much you go about thinking about it, that's not going to change that fact. If you remove those causes and conditions, now you have something like truth. But until you go through this process or practice more deeply with this process, that truth is just going to be you shaking and flipping out and freaking out, having a seizure, having electroconvulsion therapy. So that's what the process is here for. And that's how we should practice. We should practice as if we're on the edge of birth and death, as if we're practicing to get out of a trap that is the worst case scenario. That's like we're realizing that a heart is on fire, that the mind is on fire, the body is on fire. The whole house of names and forms, everything is on fire and it's burning down. So that's the problem with that guy I just talked to. He's writing books using Grok or whatever AI model he's using in a burning house. So, that's not the right place to write books or tell stories or hold on to ideas.
Not the right place for much of anything, is there?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly the right idea. And so when we meditate, we're going to feel that. This isn't the right place for anything. That's the place that you actually are, that your body actually is, that your deeper mind actually is in. That's where your self is. That's what your self is. That. And that's certainly nothing that anybody wants to have anything to do with, but that is why we're treating the world the way that we do.
Yeah, because that's not relaxing at all.
Yeah.
That's just, And then I guess in dealing with that, nothing else is really that big of a deal.
Yeah, if you can. Well, if you can deal with that, then nothing's a big deal.
Yeah.
All the time. So nothing is more important than death or whatever appears. All right, everybody. So please do join the Zoom meeting. If you have something to say, you'd like to come in and speak your piece, join the Zoom meeting, everybody. The link is right there. I'm going to use the man's room and then I'll come back. So, for an example, when I put on these pieces of glass, I'm sure some of you have seen, I've been wearing these red lenses, right? Everything looks totally different. Totally different. So if a little piece of glass like that can make everything look totally different, imagine what the lens of the biases, of the presuppositions, of the notions, of all the things going on with your ego do to your experience, to the world. So you're seeing through the lenses of your ego, and you have to take it off. You have to take those lenses off to be able to hear, to see, to experience properly. So the patujana, as they call it, is someone who's stuck with those lenses on. And then the Arya is someone who has taken those lenses off and can actually perceive clearly in a way that's not about thoughts. This is not about thoughts. This is dream. This is basically a dream. If the walls and the environment, everything collapsed and melted right now, that would make sense. Because it is a dream. It is an illusion, like a cloud. So everything is like that. All right. Anything else, Andrew?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I appreciate it really deeply. Very, yeah.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks, you too.
What I say isn't always true, nor is it always correct. Okay, so before we finish today, would anyone like to ask any question or share anything about their experience? Okay, take care, friends. Bye bye.